Chapter 3277. Xiao Hua had already told Fu Jiwen about his situation. Now that he had asked him so many seemingly ordinary things, Fu Jiwen's explanation was also normal. Especially since Fu Jiwen didn't know about his conflict with Duanmu Gongzi, of course he didn't think as much as he did. Let's wait and see. Xiao Hua didn't explain and only responded. Downstairs, in this short moment, dozens of high-grade primeval stones had already been added. Finally, the cultivator downstairs helplessly withdrew. Clearly, he was somewhat embarrassed. Good, this wind and cloud art will go to this. Yu Linfeng waved his hand. Just as he was about to settle, Xiao Hua raised his voice again, 2 top-grade primeval stones. Boom! As soon as these words were spoken, the entire auction was bustling with activity again. Obviously, the first wave of the thunder-amplifying wood was caused by Xiao Hua and the person opposite him. Now, this inconspicuous jade eyes had successfully provoked a fight between the two. Add 10 high-grade primeval stones. The voice from the opposite side was extremely fast. It was a bit faster than the previous bid with the cultivator downstairs. And this voice, when heard by Xiao Hua's ears, actually carried a kind of relaxed, a kind of excitement. It really is this guy. Xiao Hua's eyes slightly narrowed. That's right, since Xiao Hua could guess that the person opposite him was Duanmu Gongzi, how could Duanmu Gongzi not guess that it was Xiao Hua here? Not to mention that Duanmu Gongzi had already met several distinguished guests on the 3rd floor before entering the balcony. Just based on Duanmu Gongzi's words just now, as long as someone paid attention, they would be able to guess that the person on the balcony was Duanmu Gongzi. But Xiao Hua still twisted his neck and competed with him. Who else could it be other than Xiao Hua? Of course, it couldn't be ruled out that there were other cultivators who urgently needed the thunder-amplifying wood and thus didn't care about Duanmu Gongzi's face. Therefore, Duanmu Gongzi was the same as Xiao Hua, bidding with the cultivator downstairs in an uncertain situation. The purpose of this bidding wasn't the wind and cloud art, but Xiao Hua's identity. Even the moment Duanmu Gongzi bid for the wind and cloud art, he already denied that Xiao Hua was on the balcony and thought that the cultivator downstairs was Xiao Hua. Of course, in this way, Duanmu Gongzi won the wind and cloud art and ruined Xiao Hua's good thing, so Duanmu Gongzi was also happy. After all, it was only a top-grade primeval stone, Duanmu Gongzi could still afford to waste. Since Xiao Hua understood the reason, why didn't he stand up to fight? There had already been conflicts left and right, so what was one more? Naturally, Xiao Hua's shout had revealed his identity to young Master Duanmu at the same time. How could young Master Duanmu not be excited? 3 top-grade primordial stones. Xiao Hua shouted again without hesitation. Fu Jiwen was greatly alarmed and said anxiously, "Fellow Daoist Xiao, although this cultivation method is rare, but it's really not worth 2 supreme-grade essence stones. Add another 10 upper-grade primordial stones." Young Master Duanmu also opened his mouth. Forget it. At this moment, Xiao Hua smiled and said loudly, "Just now, this old man took advantage of this fellow immortal. This time, even though this old man really desires this jade eye, in order to make up for the injury I inflicted on fellow immortal, I'll give it to fellow immortal. You." Right after Xiao Hua finished speaking, a furious roar rose, but it only lasted for a moment before the voice fell silent again. When it spoke again, there was no anger in it. "Then thank you, fellow Daoist." Hearing the word fellow Daoist, Xiao Hua shrugged and said to Fu Jiwen with a smile, "See, you're indeed a fellow Daoist. This Xiao knows his mistake and corrects it. Can this be considered the greatest virtue?" Fu Jiwen naturally couldn't see Xiao Hua's expression, but he stood up apologetically and cupped his hands, saying, "Alas, it's all my fault. I caused fellow Daoist Xiao to become enemies with this person." At this point, what did Fu Jiwen not understand? It's just that he thought it was his own matter that made things difficult for Xiao Hua. It has nothing to do with you. Xiao Hua waved his hand, indicating for Fu Jiwen to stand up. If there's no accident, that person should be young Master Duanmu of the Duanmu family. This Xiao doesn't know his name, but when I entered Star Picking Tower, this Xiao inadvertently had an unnecessary conflict with him. Even if this Xiao ignores him, he'll still remember this Xiao in his heart. There's no harm in letting him spend 3 supreme-grade primordial stones to deepen his impression. Psi tilde Duanmu family. Xiao Hua said it casually, but Fu Jiwen gasped. The Duanmu family was truly a colossus to him. Ignore him. Xiao Hua waved his hand, he also doesn't know who this Xiao is. After tonight, we'll go our separate ways. Fu Jiwen looked at Xiao Hua's figure, bit his lips slightly, and said in a low voice, fellow Daoist Xiao, the Duanmu family isn't an ordinary family. Even if fellow Daoist has the cultivation of 7th grade essence energy, I'm afraid you won't be able to confront them head-on. Oh, 7th grade essence energy? When Xiao Hua heard this, he unconsciously felt a little bitter in his mouth. 7th grade essence energy was the cultivation of body integration. Given 1,000 years, who knew if Xiao Hua could cultivate into body integration? However, Fu Jiwen hesitated again and said, the descendants of the Duanmu family are also divided into direct and side branches, and even partial branches. Not everyone with the surname Duanmu can't be provoked. To be able to participate in this kind of auction in Bronze Pillar Nation, they shouldn't be from the direct branch of the Duanmu family. Fellow Daoist Xiao doesn't need to be too worried. Yen, this Xiao understands. Xiao Hua's voice regained its calmness. He already had a plan in his heart. This Duanmu family was like the Imperial Thunder sect. Although it was very big, but on the other hand, it also had a lot of disciples. This Duanmu young master's cultivation wasn't very high, but there were probably many disciples like him in the Duanmu family. There might not be any top cultivators who would stand up for some small matter for no reason. You better tell this Xiao what the 5th imperial artifact is. All right. Fu Jiwen saw that Xiao Hua was calm. Although he was a little anxious in his heart, he could only agree and sit down again. He said, the 5th imperial artifact is the divine devil chess. Divine devil chess? When Xiao Hua heard this, he frowned again. This, what chess? How did it become one of the top 10 imperial artifacts? Fellow Daoist isn't the only one who is puzzled. Even I and many other cultivators don't understand. Fu Jiwen said absent-mindedly, it said that the reason why the divine devil chess became one of the top 10 imperial artifacts is because of the mystery of this divine devil chess. No one has ever seen this divine devil chess, and no one knows the use of this divine devil chess. I have only heard that this divine devil chess is a chess set that uses heaven and earth as the chessboard, and gods and devils as the chess pieces. Gods and devils? How is that possible? Xiao Hua snorted. He felt that this Confucian student was the best at making up nonsense. Everything that came out of their mouth was impossible. Gods and devils, how could they be chess pieces? If gods and devils were chess pieces, who would be able to control gods and devils? That's right. Fu Jiwen withdrew the trace of worry in his eyes and said with a smile, that's right. However, I have also heard of some legends that are related to this divine devil chess. Xiao Hua looked downstairs. The auction had started again. Yu Linfeng actually took out some Dao sect talisman crafting and alchemy techniques to bid. These talisman crafting and alchemy techniques were obviously more popular than golden core cultivation techniques. Many cultivators began to bid. Of course, the price of these secret techniques was far less than the golden core cultivation techniques. Suddenly, Xiao Hua's heart moved, and he secretly said, damn it, I forgot. I have now reached the peak of golden core stage. Although I still don't have any signs of condensing a nascent soul, and I don't know how to condense a nascent soul, I should prepare these nascent soul pills and nascent soul birth pills. Now in these 3 continents, Dao sects have declined, and it's hard to say if there are any nascent soul cultivators. Where would there be people who can refine nascent soul pills and nascent soul birth pills for them? I'm afraid I have to refine them myself. It's said that only pills refined by pill masters who surpass nascent soul can truly form a nascent soul. However, in terms of cultivation and comprehension of heavenly Tao, my green-robed primordial spirit may not be inferior to a nascent soul cultivator. I wonder if the nascent soul birth pills and nascent soul birth pills he refined are useful? No matter what, I don't have the pill formulas here, and I have to find the pill formulas of these pills in these 3 continents. Alas, it's really difficult. Hihi, young Master Fu. Xiao Hua's ears perked up, waiting for Yu Linfeng to finish refining the pill formulas. At the same time, he said to Fu Jiwen, "Quickly tell me about the legend." Fu Jiwen cleared his throat, and said with a smile, "This legend is different from misty like immortal robe. According to legend, tens of thousands of years ago, there was a flourishing empire on this hidden immortal continent called Dongchen. This Dongchen Empire's territory was vast, and it occupied most of Qing province and Shu province among the 9 provinces of hidden immortal continent. It was more than 10 times bigger than the second-ranked country. Moreover, this Dongchen Empire's several generations of kings were extremely wise. Under their political and military skills, this Dongchen Empire's people were rich, and the country was prosperous, attracting tens of thousands of countries. However, in the end, an extremely ambitious monarch appeared in the Dongchen Empire. He wanted to be the ruler of the entire hidden immortal continent, so he began to develop his military force and frantically expanded. At the beginning, the Dongchen Empire's expansion was very smooth, and it once reached 3 provinces. However, when the Dongchen Empire attacked a nameless small country in Yang province, they encountered an unprecedented resistance. Many of the Dongchen Empire's famous generals died in this small country. In the end, the king was enraged and personally led the army to attack. This king was said to have a cultivation of 5th-grade essence force, and he had countless generals under his command. All of them were 3rd or 4th-grade essence force cultivators. Under the king's frantic attack, that small country was forced to retreat, and finally reached the end of the line. Just when the Dongchen Empire's king thought that victory was in his hands, he heard a series of earth-shattering roars from thousands of miles away. The originally clear sky was instantly covered with dark clouds, and the entire ground was also covered with black flames. In this drastic change in the sky, a huge chessboard appeared. On the left and right of the chessboard, there were 6 godly generals and 6 demon generals. Each of them had their own responsibilities, and they charged out from the chessboard. Within thousands of miles, all living things were slaughtered by these 12 godly demons. Although the king urgently mobilized all the generals to fight back, how could they be a match for the godly demons? In just half a day's time, Dongchen Empire's 100,000 elite soldiers were all crushed into meat paste. Not a single one of them could escape alive. The most frightening thing was that the nameless small country also had no survivors. Within thousands of miles, all living things were plunged into misery and suffering. Vengeful spirits wandered around freely, and even the demon generals who were born with ghosts could not devour the millions of living things in time. -11. Chapter 3278. After all the living beings were massacred, wind and thunder raged between heaven and earth. Torrential rain poured down, and everything within 10,000 miles became a swamp. However, within this swamp, corpses lay everywhere, and blood flowed everywhere. The stench of blood did not dissipate even after 100 years, and no one could survive in this place. Fu Jiwen spoke eloquently. As for the celestial fiend chess that caused such a calamity, it disappeared without a trace. Where it went, or which expert triggered the celestial fiend chess, no one knows until now. Of course, from this legend, I feel that this celestial fiend chess is a great killing machine. Its activation requires the sacrifice of tens of thousands, or even hundreds of millions of living beings. Unless it's a matter of life and death, no one would easily take it out. That's why it's so mysterious. My goodness. Xiao Hua sighed, such a great killing machine. I'm afraid it's ranked first among the 10 great imperial artifacts, right? Why is it only ranked 5th? Fu Jiwen shook his head. This celestial fiend chess is too bloody. Confucian cultivators would never place it first. Actually, Xiao Hua laughed again. This legend is too exaggerated, to the point that I feel that it's all made up. Look at that so-called Dongchen Empire. They're crazy and exaggerated. Do those Confucian aristocratic families not care? Although Duanmu aristocratic family is a first-class Confucian aristocratic family, it's not difficult for them to reach out and take care of this matter, right? Secondly, that monarch was actually able to cultivate to the 4th grade of origin power. How long is his lifespan? He's probably tired of being the monarch, right? Thirdly, so many famous generals have fallen in this nameless small country. That monarch, How could he personally go into battle? Furthermore, life is the most important thing. Fourthly, since Dongchen Empire is so powerful, it must have 10 great imperial artifacts, right? Can't the ones ranked first suppress the celestial fiend chess? Ha ha. Fu Jiwen laughed. Fellow Daoist Xiao, don't nitpick too much. This is just a legend, who knows if it's true? However, there's one thing that's true. Oh. It's that 10,000 miles of blood pool. Fu Jiwen said. Today, that blood pool is still uninhabitable, and it's still abnormally bloody. Even birds can't fly over that blood pool. Back then, I even made a trip there. Is that so? Xiao Hua asked curiously. That place is in Yang province? Yes, it's Celestial Fiend Blood Pool. If there is a chance, this Xiao will personally go and take a look. It was very strange. When Xiao Hua heard this very unfamiliar name, a trace of feeling suddenly appeared in his heart. This feeling was indescribable, as if it was a kind of summoning. Oh, that's right. As soon as Xiao Hua felt this, he immediately asked, the God and Devil Blood Pool is the place where the God and Devil chest disappeared. Could it be that no one went there to see it? Xiao Xiao, 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 Confucian, Xiao, Xiao, Xiao Hua, Confucian, Yang, Xiao, Yang, Confucian, Confucian, Taoist and cultivators, fiends, Yang, 1,000 years and, Confucian, Xiao, Confucand and years. Xiao Xiao Xiao, Xiao, Yate. Xiao Xiao, 8, Yang. Xiao. How dare you? You're going against your ancestors. Just as Xiao Hua sighed and wanted to listen to the stories of the other 10 great imperial equipments, he heard a few angry curses that sounded like rolling thunder coming from downstairs, instantly attracting Xiao Hua and Fu Jiwen's attention. The two of them thought to themselves at the same time, what's going on? At this auction, Yu Linfeng had a row of 4 scrolls open in front of him. These scrolls were all rolled up together and tied together with purple threads. In front of him, the so-called rotten scholars that Xiao Hua had just seen walked out of the crowd. They stood under these scrolls and scolded, Yu Linfeng, you are also a disciple of us Confucian cultivators. Your star-plucking tower is also a branch of us Confucian cultivators. How can you be so blinded by primeval stones? The so-called imperial artifacts, the so-called spiritual herbs, the so-called blood ink, you can just bid. Those are only used for cultivation, defense, and attack. But although the calligraphy and paintings of the great scholars of the early years contain an unparalleled noble spirit, they themselves represent the academic achievements of these great scholars. They are the crystallization of their lifetime's knowledge, and can't be compared to those earthly imperial artifacts and scrolls. You're bidding for the painstaking efforts of these great scholars in public. Isn't that a disgrace to culture? Isn't that a disgrace to your ancestors? Although Yu Linfeng's expression was somewhat awkward, he still carefully cupped his hands and said, Seniors, although these scrolls are the writings of great scholars, they're still scrolls. Our star-picking tower can't just keep these sacred objects in our tower, can we? We have to let these great scholars' knowledge be admired by the younger generation, right? Perhaps our star-picking tower's method is a bit wrong, a bit vulgar, and can't enter your eyes, but it's still our star-picking tower's way of commemorating and valuing these great scholars, right? Bullshit. An old man with a bald head and a few strands of white hair under his chin raised his walking stick and swung it at Yu Linfeng in midair. He scolded, I'll beat you to death, you unfilial junior. The calligraphy and paintings of great scholars are elegant objects that can only be admired in a quiet room. Once these elegant objects are here, they're stained with the stench of money. Inside, the noble spirit that all of you are drooling over is also somewhat inferior. Although these calligraphy and paintings have an incomparably pure noble spirit, these are the condensation of the great scholar's essence, qi, and spirit. They're not used for ordinary attacks. Another old man raised his trembling arm and said, You little bastard, your words are even better than singing. Who doesn't know that you're using these calligraphy and paintings as scrolls? Using the essence, qi, and spirit of these great scholars to fight for you. When the essence, qi, and spirit of these calligraphy and paintings are gone, these calligraphy and paintings will become trash. Ari, what a wastrel. Ha ha ha. Upstairs, Xiao Hua laughed. thinking, isn't this the rotten scholar that Xiao Yi mentioned just now, who's here to cause trouble? They treat the scrolls of those great scholars as their heirlooms and don't allow Zhai Xinglu to bid for them. But, is this possible? Sure enough, Yu Linfeng said loudly, seniors, if you feel that these calligraphy and paintings are the painstaking efforts of great scholars and can only be admired in a quiet room, then why don't you bid for these calligraphy and paintings? If they're in your hands, won't my Zhai Xinglu be more at ease? Your Zhai Xinglu is blinded by greed. Don't tell me the base price of these calligraphy and paintings are in supreme-grade primordial stones. How can a few poor old men like us afford to bid for them? A few rotten scholars said angrily. Hearing this, Fu Jiwen also understood. He sighed and said, what these seniors said is right. The ancient great scholars' handwriting is getting fewer and fewer. I don't know when these will all disappear. Calligraphy and paintings without essence, qi, and spirit, are simply dead objects. It's impossible to show the style of the great scholars of various sect. Xiao Hua just stood there and spoke without pain. He waved his hand with a smile, if the old doesn't go, the new won't come. Without these ancient great scholars, aren't there still the great scholars of today? There are more and more great scholars in each generation. What's so great about that? Haha. Fu Jiwen smiled bitterly and said, fellow Xiao may not know, but the so-called great scholars are also called great scholars. They're not purely from cultivation. They are those who read books and poems, have noble moral character, and are knowledgeable scholars. Those who can be called great scholars, or great scholars, are those who opened a school of thought and have a place in the debate of the 100 schools of thought. How can it be so easy for the later generations to give birth to them? So that's how it is. Xiao Hua's face unconsciously changed, and he was filled with respect. He already understood that this so-called great scholar was not a kind of realm as he thought, but a kind of honor, a kind of title. If he forced himself to compare with the people of the Dao sect, then the founder of the Imperial Thunder sect, Daoist Master Qian Yun, was probably this kind of person. Then, the debate of the 100 schools of thought. Xiao Hua just said half of this sentence, but he swallowed it back down. He didn't even seem to understand the 10 great imperial artifacts. Now he actually wanted to ask about the debate of the 100 schools of thought. He was afraid that if he let Fu Jiwen ask them one by one, he wouldn't be able to finish all of them tonight. Let's wait and slowly ask in the future. Xiao Hua didn't ask anymore, but at the auction, those rotten scholars became even more aggressive. They practically jumped up and cursed Zhai Xinglu's evil deeds. From the calligraphy and paintings of the great scholars to the cultivation methods of the Confucian school, and even the imperial artifacts of the Confucian school, they all became Zhai Xinglu's crimes of forgetting their ancestors and betraying their ancestors. No matter how Yu Linfeng explained, he was not allowed to bid on these great scholars' calligraphy and paintings. Xiao Hua was a bit bored and was just about to ask about the 10 great imperial artifacts when he suddenly became vigilant. He raised his eyebrows and asked, Xiao Yi, what's the matter? Reporting to Senior, someone sent a visiting card and wants to come and pay a visit to Senior. Xiao Yi's voice came from outside. Xiao Hua's eyes turned, and he said with a smile, come in first. Yes, Senior. As Xiao Yi spoke, she walked in with a golden visiting card. Just as she was about to respectfully hand it over, Xiao Hua hurriedly waved his hand and said, don't be anxious. This old man is just asking, is the owner of this visiting card an honored guest on the 3rd floor? Yes, Senior. Xiao Yi nodded and said, any honored guest on the 3rd floor of the Bright Moon Palace can pay a visit to each other if they don't want to hide their identity. Just now, this servant not only saw several attendants of the honored guest carrying visiting cards to other pavilions, but also saw 2 honored guests enter other rooms. Who sent this visiting card? Do you know? Xiao Hua asked again. Xiao Yi shook her head. This servant doesn't know. The one who sent the visiting card was also Xiao Yi, not that senior's attendant. Since that's the case, this old man doesn't need to look at this visiting card. Xiao Hua said with a flick of his sleeve, tell that Xiao Yi exactly what I said. Xiao Yi's expression changed slightly again, and she begged in a low voice, Senior, you don't need to make things so stiff. Even if you don't want to see that person, you only need to say that you don't want to see him. There's no need to return the visiting card. This kind of face-slapping matter. Senior should consider it more carefully. -11. Chapter 3279. So it's like this. Xiao Hua had always believed in the advice of others. He thought for a moment and said, then put down the visiting card. You tell Xiao Yi that this old man has a guest here and it's not convenient for me to see him. Xiao Yi's face lit up with joy. She smiled sweetly at Xiao Hua and placed the visiting card on the desk before hurrying out. Fu Jiwen really wanted to know who the guest was. However, this was clearly Xiao Hua's private matter. Since Xiao Hua didn't intend to open the golden visiting card, Fu Jiwen shifted his gaze away from the golden visiting card and looked at the auction. At this time, the auction was as lively as a marketplace. Although there were no peddlers, the several old men, whose veins were bulging, looked like old beggars who were pointing and gesticulating around a vegetable stall. Where was the elegance in them? Where was the etiquette? It was as if the beauty of their first love was suddenly exposed in front of everyone, and they were trying their best to hide it. However, as Xiao Hua watched, he felt somewhat sorrowful in his heart. Yes, the people of the secular world often said that there were only two words in this world, either fame or fortune. Everything else was born for fame and fortune, and if these two words were combined into one, they would become one word, and that would be profit. All the people in the world came for profit, and all the people in the world went for profit. This was exactly the case. Similarly, in the eyes of cultivators, there were also two words, either merit or longevity. All other things were born for this merit and longevity. This skill was naturally the cultivation level, the realm, and the strength. This longevity was also lifespan, and immortality that cultivators pursued. If these two words were combined into one, it would be longevity. The cultivators in the world had countless methods. Killing and robbing, deceiving each other, and being selfish, wasn't it all for strength? And with strength, wasn't collecting a lot of resources for one's own longevity? It could also be said that everything in the world came for longevity, and everything in the world went for longevity. On the other hand, these seemingly inflexible scholars, although they took advantage of their seniority and pointed fingers at others, what they stubbornly defended was also the thought in their heart. This thought was the inheritance of Confucian cultivation, the essence of Confucian cultivation, the true meaning of Confucian cultivation. Perhaps Dao Shan, who doesn't have any cultivation, can be compared to them. Looking at these rotten scholars, Xiao Hua couldn't help but think of Dao Shan. When they had just arrived at the Seven Suns Temple tonight, Dao Shan's meticulous etiquette and clean and decent Daoist robes had left a deep impression on Xiao Hua. This might be the last pride of these so-called rotten scholars, and also their last struggle. Xiao Hua looked at the few old men who were panting and shouting hoarsely as he thought to himself, in the torrent of people who pursue profits, the so-called persistence can only be regarded as pedantic and can only be used as a support. In the eyes of others, the dignity that they try their best to maintain can only be regarded as the performance of actors, which can only make people laugh. Perhaps, such a Confucian cultivator is the hope of Taoism? Thinking of Xiao Yi's mockery of these rotten scholars, Xiao Hua understood that the previous inheritance of Confucian cultivation had already declined, and the Daoist cultivation method that they had always ridiculed had gradually appeared. Even if it was only the beginning, it was clear that the essence of Taoism cultivation had already been implanted in the hearts of the new generation of Confucian cultivators. After another half a meal of cultivation, several white-haired rotten scholars collapsed on the ground. After all, they were already old, and their bodies could no longer support their rainbow-like ideals. Several Xiao Yis from the Bright Moon Palace leisurely walked over and offered hot tea and pastries. But how could these old men use the pastries of the Bright Moon Palace? What was the difference between this and food that was given away? The old man's face was pale, and with a wave of his sleeve, all the pastries and hot water fell to the ground. He stepped on the pastries and slowly staggered away. Looking at these lonely figures, the entire Bright Moon Palace was deathly silent. Other people might not have thought as much as Xiao Hua, but these old men's actions that pointed directly at their hearts caused them to naturally feel ashamed in their hearts, an indescribable sense of inferiority. Sigh. Contrary to Xiao Hua's expectations, Fu Jiwen, who was beside him, looked at these old men with an indescribable expression in his eyes. He sighed deeply, and his tone was obviously heavy. "Young Master Fu?" Xiao Hua asked curiously, "Could it be, you have other thoughts about these rotten scholars?" He, fellow Daoist Xiao also knows about rotten scholars? Fu Jiwen smiled faintly. This humble one not only has some thoughts, but this humble one has also been deeply harmed by them. Deeply harmed by them? Xiao Hua was even more puzzled. "Can you tell me more about it?" "I'm really sorry, fellow Daoist Xiao, but this is this humble one's privacy, and it's not good to joke about it." Fu Jiwen shook his head. "However, although this humble one says that this humble one has been deeply harmed by them, the root of this harm is still love. It's just that this love is too heavy, too old-fashioned." Xiao Hua looked thoughtfully at Fu Jiwen's complicated expression, then smiled and said, "As long as it's love, then it's fine. Whether it's old-fashioned or heavy, it's better than nothing. Moreover, this is love, the most selfless thing in the world. Young Master Fu, treasure it well." "Yes, this humble one understands." Fu Jiwen nodded. "Deep love, deep responsibility, that's exactly how it is." At this point, Fu Jiwen didn't say anything else, and Xiao Hua didn't ask any more questions. He stuck his head out and looked down. At this moment, he was very curious about these 4 scrolls. These were the handwriting of a great scholar who founded a sect. What would they look like? Fellow immortals. At this moment, Yu Linfeng smiled bitterly. "My Zhai Xinglu actually understands these elders' painstaking efforts. These scrolls are indeed the handwriting of an ancient great scholar, and shouldn't be treated as ordinary scrolls to be auctioned. Of course, my Zhai Xinglu has also taken out these scrolls separately as a sign of respect. Moreover, my Zhai Xinglu has always been a place for auctions. Since my Zhai Xinglu has obtained these scrolls, it means that these scrolls can be auctioned. Moreover, our Confucian cultivation is the grandest cultivation method in the world, and we can't stick to the rules. We can only innovate at every moment, and maintain a fresh flow of water. This is the only way to ensure our Confucian cultivation's solid position in the 3 continents. Forget it, this humble one won't say much. Either way, others will be criticized, and this humble one will silently guard my heart. This humble one is currently the host of this auction, so this auction will be a success." Yu Linfeng pointed at the scrolls in front of him again and smiled bitterly. "Also, this humble one would like to say that the handwriting in these scrolls, although it's also left behind by a great Confucian cultivator, it's not the great Confucian you all mentioned just now. For example, the scroll on the left has the word law written by the great Confucian of the legalists, Senior Han Cheng. Fellow immortals, think about it, if it's really the handwriting of a great Confucian who founded a sect, then it's a treasure of calligraphy in the world. Not to mention that my Zhai Xinglu can't afford it, even if we want to bid, we have to save it for last." "Haha, fellow immortal you, don't hold back your resentment." A cultivator laughed. "The old man's words make sense, and your Zhai Xinglu's actions are also reasonable. There's no right or wrong in this world. Fellow immortal, why don't you open Senior Han's treasure of calligraphy and take a look?" "That's right, fellow immortal you, hurry up and open Senior Han's treasure of calligraphy. We can't wait any longer." Many people started shouting, and even more people looked eagerly at the other 3 scrolls. They really wanted to know who the great Confucian handwriting that Zhai Xinglu had put up for bid belonged to. "Everyone, please wait a moment. I still have to inform the officials of the Copper Pillar State. If the great Confucian handwriting is opened, it'll cause too much of a commotion," Yu Linfeng said, gesturing to a corner of the Bright Moon Palace. There, a woman in palace robes hurried over. "Fellow Daoist Xiao Tilda upstairs," Fu Jiwen explained to Xiao Hua, "the legalists are a branch of Confucian cultivators. Because they believe in using law to rule the country, there's no need to be close or distant, there's no need to be high or low, there's no need to judge by law, they're called the legalists." The famous ancient figures Guan Zhong and Zi Chan were the pioneers of the legalists. Li Kai, Shong Yang, Shen Buhai, Shen Dao, and the others founded the legalists. In the end, Han Fei combined Shong Yang's law, Shen Dao's power, and Shenbuhai's technique to form the culmination of the legalists' ideology. Therefore, Han Fei can be considered the great scholar who founded the legalists. He received the honorific title of Zi and is known as Han Fei's Zi. Note, in the future esoteric debate, the third place won't be listed solely for the ancestors. It's in accordance with history. However, everyone must remember that this is just a name. There's no need to take the rest seriously. Apart from senior Han Fei Zi, the other representatives of the legalists are Li Sai and Shong Yang. As for senior Han Cheng, he's a descendant of senior Han Fei Zi. As for which generation, I'm not too sure. Apart from the legalists, what other 99 schools are there? Xiao Hua finally couldn't help but ask. Fu Jiwen smiled and waved his hand. Fellow Daoist, you misunderstand. The esoteric debate is just a description of the numerous and complex schools of thought. There aren't really 100 schools of thought. To be honest, according to the historical records, there were many schools of thought that hadn't been founded. How could there be only 100? There were more than thousands. Confucianism is actually this prosperous. Xiao Hua was truly amazed. Apart from the legalists, the most famous schools are the Confucians, the Mohists, the militarists, the scholars, the Yin-Yang school, the school of vertical and horizontal, the school of miscellaneous, the school of pharma, the school of fiction, the school of martial arts, and other schools of thought. Fu Jiwen said simply, even if it's just these simple and famous schools, I'm afraid fellow Daoist Xiao will be confused if I explain them one by one. Why don't you take a look at what scrolls the Bright Moon Palace is selling and I'll slowly explain them to fellow Daoist. Hihi, that's great. Xiao Hua nodded. To be honest, when he heard the legalists say something like don't be too close or distant, don't be too noble or lowly, cut off by law, Xiao Hua felt a headache coming on. He was a genuine Daoist cultivator. Although he had some Confucian foundation, he didn't have the slightest understanding of any theories or poetry. How could he possibly understand? He might as well listen to the stories of the 10 great imperial artifacts. -11. Chapter 3280. Yu Linfeng smiled and raised his hand. Han Cheng's scroll slowly flew to Yu Linfeng's eyes. Yu Linfeng carefully reached out and pinched the purple thread. With a gentle tug, the scroll slowly unfurled. Swoosh! A pure white light shot out from where the scroll was unfurled, as if opening a door under the sun. Buzz! Another sword hum followed the white light. Boom! The light was so dazzling that even someone as strong as Xiao Hua couldn't help but squint. Before he could get used to the light, another muffled thunderous sound rushed out from the scroll like a torrential river, going against the heavens and rushing towards the top of the Bright Moon Palace. Sai lo lo! With a sound that sounded like it was crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood, the defensive primary formation on top of the Bright Moon Palace was instantly destroyed by the overwhelming gang qi contained within the white light. Not only did the countless sword cries within the Bright Moon Palace resonate, but the overwhelming gang qi also pierced straight into the night sky like a giant sword. Bright Moon Square was a place that didn't sleep. It was brightly lit and people didn't sleep at all. Jiaxing Lu was an extremely mysterious place to them. Because those who could come to Bright Moon Square were all rich, but rich people might not be able to go to Jiaxing Lu. Even if some people who didn't know the details wanted to take a look at Jiaxing Lu, they didn't have any vitality stones or traces of cultivation. It was difficult for them to enter Jiaxing Lu. Now, this giant flying sword was like a heavenly soldier rushing into the night sky. Everyone within 10 miles could see it clearly. How could they not be shocked? Inevitably, everyone in the Bright Moon Lane escaped from the nephrite and the fine wine. They stretched their bodies to look at the flying sword in the night sky, gesticulating with their hands and feet. They were abnormally excited as they discussed incessantly. Such a grand occasion was even more beautiful than any fireworks. Although all eyes in Bright Moon Square were focused on Jiaxing Lu, although those who hadn't slept yet were also focused on Jiaxing Lu, the vast energy that represented righteousness couldn't illuminate the night sky. Between the light and darkness, there were still some ghosts that wandered freely in the darkness, undisturbed by the sharpness of the flying sword. This is the sword qi of a sword cultivator. The moment Han Cheng opened the scroll, the brilliance was so brilliant that Xiao Hua couldn't help but close his eyes. However, even so, the large law character still passed through Xiao Hua's eyes and engraved itself into his mind. Every stroke of this law character was in the shape of a flying sword. The entire brilliance rushing into the night sky was also a soaring sword energy. Xiao Hua, who was used to seeing sword qi in Dawn Rain continent, couldn't help but groan. He completely understood in his heart, this sword cultivator is indeed a branch of Confucian cultivator. Moreover, it actually originated from Confucian cultivator's legalism. Alas, there are laws in the mortal world, with punishment as the guiding principle. There are laws in heaven and earth, with the sword as the guiding principle. Isn't the law of heaven and earth swept away by sword energy? Inside the bright moon palace, the sounds of metal clanging could be heard. Some were the cries of swords, and some were the cries of weapons. Even some of the weaker cultivators had their true energy stirred. Wush tilde Yu Linfeng shook the scroll in his hand, and the scroll slowly closed up. The sword light that soared into the sky was absorbed into the scroll. Naturally, the sounds of metal clanging within the bright moon palace gradually faded away, and the palace gradually returned to its previous calm. Good heavens, this is merely Senior Han Cheng's handwriting, but it already has such a powerful aura. The majestic aura contained in this handwriting can really shock heaven and earth. Even after fellow immortal you put away the scroll, this one still hasn't seen Senior Han's original handwriting. If someone were to hold this scroll, wouldn't it be comparable to an imperial weapon? A shocked voice couldn't help but speak. I just don't know. If it was Senior Han Fee's original handwriting, what kind of aura would it have? Fellow immortal, what you said is also this one's thoughts. Yu Linfeng's eyes flashed with fervor as he looked at the scroll in front of him. Although this one hasn't seen that kind of heaven-shaking aura, this one heard from the seniors of Star Plucking Tower that if it was Senior Han Fee's handwriting, this brilliance should be able to penetrate the outer realms and reflect the power of the outer realms stars. No evil in the world can resist this power of starlight. In particular, if it was Senior Han Fee's handwriting, what broke through just now wasn't my Bright Moon Palace's origin array, but all the restrictions within a radius of 100 li would no longer exist. Damn it! Others didn't say anything, but Xiao Hua jumped up first and scolded with a smile. How is that possible? This thing isn't a real spiritual treasure. Without anyone activating it, how can it have such power? Unfortunately, before Xiao Hua finished speaking, Fu Jiwen laughed and said, Fellow Daoist Xiao, you're still lacking. What Yu Linfeng said. I'm afraid it's not enough to describe Senior Han Fee's original handwriting at his peak. According to this one's ancestors, 100,000 years ago, when the demon realm invaded. What? Demon realm invaded? Xiao Hua's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. This was the first time he heard about the demon realm in the hidden immortal continent. Yes, it's really that time when the demon realm invaded. Fu Jiwen didn't understand Xiao Hua's surprise and nodded. That time, Senior Han Fee's original handwriting revealed its might for the first time. When it was opened, it directly killed 100 demon generals. 100 demon generals. Xiao Hua was flabbergasted. He already knew from Zhong Qingxiao that the strength of a demon general was comparable to the golden core and nascent soul stage of the Dao sect. This Senior Han Fee's handwriting was actually able to kill 100 nascent soul stage demon generals. Wasn't this too unimaginable? Bragging. Although Xiao Hua didn't refute, it was obvious that he was already secretly criticizing. It's exactly 100 demon generals. Fu Jiwen laughed. Fellow Daoist, don't think this one is exaggerating. The righteous qi of us Confucian cultivators is the nemesis of the demon realm. Although their physical bodies are incomparably powerful, the demon flames and demon blood they cultivate have no resistance in front of the righteous qi of us Confucian cultivators. Especially when they invaded my hidden immortal continent, in front of the righteous qi that has been settled for hundreds of millions of years, it was like a drop of water falling into a sea of fire. How could it set off a big wave? Oh, this one understands. Xiao Hua nodded. There is righteous qi in heaven and earth. Since ancient times, it has been supporting the justice of the world. As long as there are people, There will be this kind of aura, everlasting. No, what fellow Daoist said is wrong. Fujiwen shook his head. There is righteous qi in heaven and earth. This righteous qi has existed since ancient times and does not vary from person to person. Where there are people, there is righteous qi. Where there are no people, there is also righteous qi. It can be said that everything has righteous qi. Even the demon realm also has righteous qi. And this righteous qi is the true qi cultivated by Confucian cultivators. It is not the spiritual qi of heaven and earth cultivated by the Tao sect. Boom! Fujiwen's words were like a stone rushing into Xiao Hua's ancient well that had remained motionless for 10,000 years. Xiao Hua instantly became like a clay statue. An indescribable fluctuation emitted from Xiao Hua's body. The stardust that was originally covering his image instantly turned into dust and floated around Xiao Hua. Of course, in just an instant, the starlight and silver light in Xiao Hua's eyes retracted. All the dust fell around Xiao Hua and turned back into stardust. A sudden realization came from Xiao Hua's mouth. So it's like this, so it's like this. This one was wrong. Yes, Xiao Hua was really wrong. His mistake was inconceivable. He had always been cultivating the righteous qi of Confucian cultivators, but what he refined was only the spiritual qi of heaven and earth. How could it be the righteous qi? No wonder he had been cultivating for 100 years and was still unable to condense his core. It turned out that the path he started on was wrong, and his success in refining essence into qi, most of it was because of the core that he passed on to others, right? Fellow Daoist Xiao? Fujiwen was somewhat puzzled. He hesitantly asked Xiao Hua, "What's wrong?" Nothing. Since he found the root, Xiao Hua immediately felt refreshed. He said with a smile, "This one always thought that the righteous qi was the spiritual qi of heaven and earth. Who knew that it was actually so different?" "Oh, that's natural." Fujiwen understood and said with a smile, "This is the difference between the Tao sect and Confucian cultivators. Of course there are differences. However, sometimes, the righteous qi has the spiritual qi of heaven and earth, and the righteous qi within the spiritual qi of heaven and earth. However, it may not be possible to distinguish them clearly. Then, how can one distinguish the righteous qi?" Xiao Hua asked tentatively, "Is it possible that there is a secret technique within the basic cultivation method of Confucian cultivators that is the same as the Tao sects?" "It's not the same." Fujiwen waved his hand and said, "The reason why Confucian cultivators are called Confucian cultivators is because they use the righteous qi as their foundation. They rely on Confucian to distinguish the righteous qi. Although everyone more or less has the righteous qi in their body, how can a common person like a common person understand the righteous qi? Only people like us who read and recite scriptures can read the righteous qi from the ancient characters. Only then can we use this righteous qi to trigger our own righteous qi. With our own righteous qi, only then can we draw in the righteous qi of heaven and earth." I've learned." Xiao Hua nodded. He understood that the cultivation of Confucian cultivators was still the same. It seemed that the so-called secret technique was just an opportunistic trick of the Tao sect. Suddenly, Xiao Hua's heart jumped. He seemed to have a bad premonition. He seemed to have thought of something and hurriedly asked, "Fujiwen, just now, did you see something?" "Fellow Daoist Xiao, what are you talking about?" Fujiwen was surprised by Xiao Hua's question. He didn't know what was going on. Xiao Hua saw Fujiwen's ignorance and unconsciously felt relieved. In the moment when he was absent-minded, Xue saw his death. Master Ku Qin also saw his death. Xiao Hua didn't want this Confucian cultivator in front of him to follow in their footsteps. "It's nothing." Xiao Hua waved his hand and said with a smile. However, just as he waved his hand a few times, he was stunned again. "That's not right. If Confucian cultivators don't need the spiritual qi of heaven and earth to cultivate, then what spirit stones do they use? If they don't use spirit stones, why do they still use spirit stones on the hidden immortal continent?" Xiao Hua seemed to have suddenly woken up. He seemed to have suddenly become confused. He frowned and thought. -11. Chapter 3281. Forget it, let's just ask. Xiao Hua bitterly smiled. Since I've already asked so many questions, I don't mind asking a few more idiotic questions. After Xiao Hua finished speaking the doubts in his heart, it was Fu Juwen's turn to be surprised. If it was some common knowledge from before, it could be said that Xiao Hua was a cultivator from overseas and had not stepped on the continent for a long time, so he did not know much. However, this matter of origin stones was too inconceivable. Cough cough. Xiao Hua smiled. Young Master Fu, I've always been a lone cultivator and I've always been self-sufficient, so I really don't know about this. Nothing. Fu Jiwen hurriedly waved his hand. What you know is what you know, what you don't know is what you don't know. Fellow Daoist Xiao is indeed magnanimous, but I'm still lacking. Then, Fu Jiwen gave a simple explanation. Contrary to Xiao Hua's expectations, this primordial stone also contained righteous qi. However, from what Fu Jiwen could see, the primordial stone was slightly inferior to the primordial qi used for Daoist cultivation. Of course, Confucian cultivators also had methods to absorb the noble spirit from the source stone. However, ordinary Confucian cultivators didn't use these methods. Confucian cultivators believed that the noble spirit was a living and lively world origin qi. Only the noble spirit that flowed between heaven and earth and was drawn from densely populated places was the best. Therefore, source stones were used to refine imperial equipment and arrange origin formations. So that's how it is. Xiao Hua suddenly understood. Connecting it to what he saw with his illusion breaker eyes, there were many types of world origin qi in this world. If Taoists picked one type, Confucian cultivators could naturally choose another type, and the world origin qi could also be condensed into a spirit stone. However, absorbing the noble spirit from heaven and earth is somewhat difficult. It's easy to absorb the noble spirit from the source stone. Nowadays, students are greedy and many students have secretly started to use source stones to cultivate. Fu Jiwen sighed and said, especially my Daoist sect spirit pills. It is said that after refining with a special method, it can also promote the cultivation of Confucian cultivators. Students who haven't broken through for a long time have also started to try. Now, the spirit grass and spirit fruits are a lot more expensive than before. Humans are insatiable and always seek opportunities for themselves. In the long run, what difference will there be between Confucianism and Taoism? In any case, this Xiao is a Daoist, so I won't worry about Confucian cultivators. Xiao Hua shrugged. Everyone sweeps the snow in front of their own door. There's no need to worry about others. Looking back at the auction, legalist senior Han Cheng's handwriting had already set off a frenzy of bidding. Even young Master Duanmu, who was opposite Xiao Hua, was repeatedly bidding. Clearly, this handwriting was his main objective for coming to Zhai Xinglu this time. After more than 10 rounds of bidding, everyone finally stopped. No one else bid against young Master Duanmu. However, at this moment, everyone's gaze was focused on Xiao Hua. He thought that Xiao Hua hadn't opened his mouth to bid from beginning to end. Ha 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 tilde Xiao Hua laughed. He finally understood why young Master Duanmu sent the visiting card. That was to test him, to show him a kind of intention. That was, to not let Xiao Hua compete with him in order to reach the bottom line in his heart. Add 10 high-grade primordial stones. Xiao Hua said indifferently. Boom. Everyone immediately cheered loudly. This one will also add 10 high-grade primordial stones. Young Master Duanmu's tone was also indifferent. It didn't matter if Xiao Hua increased the price, the key was that he couldn't force him step by step. In the end, it was just as young Master Duanmu thought. Xiao Hua only increased the price once, conveying that he already knew the meaning, and didn't say anything else. This caused the cultivators who wanted to watch the show to feel sad. All right. Yu Linfeng had a smile on his face. With a wave of his hand, Great Scholar Han Cheng's handwriting flew into young Master Duanmu's pavilion. With another wave of his hand, the second scroll slowly landed in front of him. This is the second great scholar's handwriting today. Fellow immortals may not be familiar with this great scholar, but fellow immortals definitely know about Confucianism. This great scholar is the Yin-Yang school's old master Zhu Yuan Han, Along with Yu Linfeng's long voice, he stretched out his slender finger and pulled the purple silk thread. As the scroll fell, two bright and dark rays of light suddenly appeared. Although it was somewhat inferior to Han Cheng's sword qi, the light and dark rays had a solemn air of annihilation. At the same time, these two rays of light soared into the sky, higher than the previous sword qi, and formed the shape of a huge yin-yang fish in the night sky. As the brilliance of this yin-yang fish circulated in the night sky, thousands of evil spirits scattered in the night sky, causing the entire bright moon square to seem to tremble. Clear yang is the sky, turbid yin is the earth. Above the earth is the clouds, below the sky is the rain. Rain comes from the earth, clouds come from the sky. Yin and yang are the Tao of heaven and earth, the outline of all things, the parents of change, the origin of life and death, and the abode of the gods. Fu Jiwen looked at the yin-yang fish in the sky through the broken origin array of the bright moon palace and sighed. Heaven and earth have yin and yang turn into two qis. Everything can be divided into two sides, yin and yang. This school of yin-yang advocates controlling the yin and yang of heaven and earth, using the two qis of yin and yang to kill all things. The great scholar who established the school of yin-yang was Zhu Yang. Later on, because he was called Zi, he was given the name Zhu Yanzi. This old master Zhu Yuanhan is most likely his descendant. Ari, the esoteric debate is indeed formidable. Xiao Hua clapped his hands and said, even though our Taoism also has the saying that Tao begets one, and one is divided into yin and yang, but the profoundness of yin and yang is truly obscure. Without a certain level of cultivation, how can one understand it? This Xiao really did not expect that this Confucian cultivator actually has a school of yin-yang that specializes in studying yin and yang. Furthermore, this Xiao admires this senior Zhu Yanzi even more. How can he explain yin and yang so clearly? That's right, 100 years ago, when Shui and Wu Hai's soul entered Xiao Hua's space, he had already experienced the division of yin and yang. If one were to talk about comprehension, Xiao Hua himself indeed has a lot. However, if one were to ask him to form a theory and explain it, it would be extremely difficult. Just like what the Taoists often say, Tao can be said, but it is not an ordinary Tao. Name can be named, but it is not an ordinary name. Just a few words can indeed extend a lot of comprehension, or can only be understood, but not explained. Actually, a strange expression appeared on Fu Jiwen's face. He hesitated for a bit, then smiled and said, this yin-yang school might have been extremely powerful in the past. It is said that Senior Zhu Yanzi obtained an innate spiritual object called the Yin-Yang Illustrated Handbook. From it, he comprehended the Tao of yin and yang and established his own school. However, as the yin-yang school of yin-yang developed, the Yin-Yang Illustrated Handbook was lost for some unknown reason. The yin-yang school of yin-yang's research on yin and yang gradually deviated. Didn't fellow Daoist Yu Linfenju say it clearly just now? Everyone might not know about Zhu Yanzi, but almost everyone in the yin-yang school knows about him. That's because the current yin and yang, more or less falls into the intersection of yin and yang. Some crooked sects, such as the Yin-Yang Unity School, also pass down some of their secret techniques from the Yin-Yang School of Yin-Yang. At this point, Fu Jiwen did not say anything else. Xiao Hua was also a person who had undergone dual cultivation. How could he not understand? Perhaps some dual cultivation secret technique, some fusion technique. These yin and yang mating techniques were the things that the Yin-Yang School of Yin-Yang was talking about, right? Decline. Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. This might be the current situation that those so-called rotten scholars don't want to see. Fu Jiwen smiled and said, time flies, clouds and flowers pass by like water. On this hidden immortal continent, not only are the dynasties of 10,000 countries replaced, even the 100 schools are also being washed away by great waves. Only schools and doctrines that can adapt to the changes of the times can truly be preserved. These are not things that can be done by humans. Back then, the Tao sect was tyrannical for a period of time. It could almost contend with the Confucian cultivators, Buddhist sects, and even the demon race. However, what about the current Tao sect? After the ancient war, wasn't it also obliterated? If you want to revive the Tao sect, is it something that can be done by a few generations? Let's not talk about this. When Fu Jiwen talked about the decline of the Dao sect, he seemed to be afraid that Xiao Hua would be displeased, so he changed the topic. Looking at the fierce bidding scene downstairs, he said, "Such a rare yin-yang school of yin-yang writing. Doesn't fellow Daoist Xiao want to bid for one? Even if this thing's true qi is used up, it is still an authentic work handed down from generation to generation." Forget it, Xiao Hua said with a smile. If it was some yin-yang illustrated handbook, if it was some harmony secret manual, this Xiao would still be interested. What kind of writing is this? This Xiao doesn't understand. Fu Jiwen laughed. Fellow Daoist Xiao is really a straightforward person. If it was an ordinary Confucian scholar, they would definitely not say these words. You dare to do it while hiding in your room, but don't dare to say it when you come out. Xiao Hua snorted disdainfully. If you want to say it, you have to use alternative words. For example, the joy of the boudoir is even greater than the one who draws the eyebrows. Fellow Daoist Xiao's straightforwardness is a disgrace to the refined. Damn it, to turn a good yin-yang into a marriage, isn't this a disgrace to the refined? Xiao Hua really couldn't see through the act of covering one's ears while stealing a bell. Especially using words to replace imagination, it was really annoying. While the two were talking, that Zhu Yuanhan's old man Zhu's calligraphy was also bought by a certain senior on the third floor. Xiao Hua also clearly saw that young Master Duanmu also seemed to slightly raise the price and immediately gave up. Clearly, he also had a tacit understanding with the others. Xiao Hua could know, and Yu Linfeng even more so. However, this was a kind of mutual compromise. The price of the calligraphy was something that both sides could bear. Who would care about the movements behind the scenes? Yu Linfeng sent that scroll to the third floor's balcony and began to bluff the third scroll. Fellow immortals, the writing on this third scroll is also very famous. Moreover, this school created a Confucian cultivation method that is widely spread in my hidden immortal continent. As he said that, Yu Linfeng opened this scroll again. Hua tilde like a burst of water, 10,000 rays of brilliance poured out from the scroll. Like the Milky Way pouring out, it directly rushed into the night sky. It was incomparably gorgeous. Noble spirit river, dozens of young voices shouted in unison, "This is the school of vertical and horizontal Confucian cultivators." Ha ha! Yu Linfeng laughed loudly and said, "Correct, correct. The river character on this scroll is the authentic work of the school of vertical and horizontal Confucian Lu Cheng, Lu Wensheng. -11. Chapter 3282. Upstairs, Fu Jiwen pointed at the righteous spirit that flashed like the Milky Way and said, "The school of vertical and horizontal is a very famous school in the esoteric debate. The school of vertical and horizontal is 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 the school of vertical and horizontal. This is the so-called vertical and horizontal. The school of vertical and horizontal was created by the two seniors Zhongyi and Su Qin. Senior Su Qin advocated the vertical and Senior Zhongyi advocated the horizontal. It was in the vertical and horizontal that the two seniors comprehended the true essence of water flow and created the cultivation method of the righteous spirit Long River. Using this as a basis, they were honored as Su Qin Zi and Zhongyi Zi respectively, leaving their names in history. Moreover, this righteous spirit Long River is very easy to obtain. It is the simplest among the many cultivation methods of the Confucian cultivators. Therefore, once this cultivation method was spread out, it was immediately passed down. In the ancient times, the number of disciples of the school of vertical and horizontal were as many as the hairs on an ox. The Confucian cultivators who answered in unison just now were most likely disciples who cultivated the righteous spirit Long River. Of course, now that this cultivation method has been spread out, they may not necessarily be disciples of the school of vertical and horizontal. As Fu Jiwen spoke, many cultivators began to bid again. This time, the liveliness was even greater than before. This was because great scholar Lu Cheng's handwriting not only had the same righteous spirit Long River as the previous handwriting, but also the true essence of the righteous spirit Long River could be found in this handwriting. This was the so-called killing two birds with one stone. All the Confucian cultivators who cultivated the righteous spirit Long River naturally rushed like ducks. After seeing the righteous spirit Long River of legalism, school of yin-yang, and school of vertical and horizontal, Xiao Hua was looking forward to the handwriting in the last scroll. He simply didn't ask about the 10 great imperial artifacts that Fu Jiwen hadn't explained yet. He smiled and stuck his head out, looking at the sounds of bidding below with interest. Fu Jiwen saw that Xiao Hua's attention wasn't here and didn't say much. He looked at Xiao Hua's star-like figure with some confusion. He really didn't understand why Xiao Hua asked him so much common sense. That's right, common sense. As a cultivator of the hidden immortal continent, whether they cultivated Confucian cultivators, Buddhist cultivators, or even Daoist cultivation methods, as long as they grew up here, they should know this common sense. Although Xiao Hua was a Dao sect cultivator and didn't understand the cultivation of Confucian cultivators, the 100 Schools debate was an ancient story. The 10 great imperial artifacts were stories that ordinary people grew up listening to. How could Xiao Hua not know? Even if he was an overseas rogue cultivator, he still had to grow up, right? Fu Jiwen did not believe that a cultivator who grew up in the hidden immortal continent would not know about the 10 great imperial equipment. Perhaps fellow Daoist Xiao came from the Thousand Demons sacred realm or the Pure Land world. This was Fu Jiwen's final guess, but this guess was immediately doubted by himself. Essence stones, who in the 3 continents didn't know about them? Maybe he came from the Pure Land. That place doesn't need vitality stones. When the dust settled, to everyone's surprise, the authentic work of the School of Vertical and Horizontal's great scholar, Lu Wensheng, was not bought by the cultivators on the balcony. The final bidder was an unknown cultivator on the ground floor. Hehe, looks like I'm not the only one who's keeping a low profile. Xiao Hua laughed. Fu Jiwen frowned and said, that might not be the case. In my opinion, I'm afraid several small aristocratic families or several sects gathered together to bid. Who cares who he is? It has nothing to do with me. I've never cultivated the noble spirit river, and I don't know anything about authentic works. Xiao Hua stretched. Moreover, this star-picking towers auction, TSK, it's really boring. There's nothing that I want. Fu Jiwen laughed and said, right now, the auction is for Confucian cultivators. Dao sect's items are very rare. What about the especially precious items? Perhaps at the end, fellow Daoist Xiao, please don't be impatient. I know. Xiao Hua nodded and pointed outside the window, saying, what I want to know now is, who is the owner of the last scroll? Which school is it from? The most famous of the 100 schools of Confucian cultivators are Confucian, Mohist, Legalist, Military, School of Famous, Yin-Yang, School of Vertical and Horizontal, School of Miscellaneous, School of Farmer, School of Novels, and School of Vertical and Horizontal. Just now, 3 great Confucian scrolls appeared, School of Legalism, School of Yin-Yang, and School of Vertical and Horizontal. As for the 4th school, it's hard to guess. Fu Jiwen's curiosity was also great. He pinched his chin and looked at Yu Linfeng holding the 4th scroll in his hand. Yu Linfeng's face carried a trace of mystery. His hand was placed on the purple silk rope, but he didn't release it. Instead, he raised his head and looked around, saying with a smile, this last scroll, I don't know if it's out of everyone's expectations. Before Yu Linfeng finished speaking, his finger shook. Boom! A violent vibration sounded, as if 10,000 horses were galloping. A 5-colored brilliance mixed with an indescribable noble spirit rushed out from the scroll. Ah! Xiao Hua was used to seeing the brilliance of Daoist cultivators' treasures. This 5-colored brilliance didn't count as anything magical. But Fu Jiwen actually jumped up from his chair in shock, shouting in shock, This is Confucian's 5 Qis unifications. Sure enough, that 5-colored noble spirit rushed into the night sky and actually formed an auspicious cloud several meters in size, illuminating half a mu of the sky. That 5-colored brilliance was different from when it rushed out just now. This time, it was extremely gentle, even more silky than a lover's gaze. And above this auspicious cloud, endless starlight faintly sprinkled down, enveloping the auspicious cloud. It really is Confucian's 5 Qis unifications. Fu Jiwen raised his head and said excitedly, Zhaixing Lu is indeed amazing, to actually be able to find the authentic writings of Confucian great Confucians. Nowadays, on the hidden immortal continent, the authentic writings of Confucian great Confucians have long been extinct. That's right, that's right. At this time, Xiao Hua suddenly shouted in hindsight, Young Master Fu, you just said that there must be Confucian writings among the century-old theories. Is Confucian the same as Confucian cultivators? Hehe, of course they're not the same. The excitement on Fu Jiwen's face hadn't disappeared, and he answered with a smile, Confucian cultivators are naturally a kind of cultivation method, just like what I just explained to fellow Daoist, using the noble spirit of heaven and earth as the foundation. And Confucian is a school of Confucian cultivators. It's just that the influence and scale of this school is far greater than the sum of the other schools, so this cultivation method is also called Confucian cultivators. It's not what fellow Daoist thinks, that Confucian cultivators are Confucian cultivators. At this point, Fu Jiwen smiled bitterly again, smacking his lips and saying, although that's the case, in reality, Confucian cultivators account for 90% of Confucian cultivators. Saying that Confucian cultivators are Confucian cultivators is not impossible. Who was the great scholar who founded Confucian? Xiao Hua's eyes lit up, and he asked with extreme curiosity. Speaking of Confucian cultivators, Fu Jiwen was also in high spirits, and he spoke frankly with assurance, Confucian cultivators are one of the most important schools of thought in the 100 schools of thought. Confucian cultivators use the 6 arts as their method, advocate etiquette, music, benevolence, and righteousness. They advocate loyalty and forgiveness, and they advocate the golden mean. They advocate rule of virtue and benevolence. Confucian cultivators emphasize the function of education, and they believe that heavy education and light punishment is the only way for a country to be stable, and the people to be rich and happy. They advocate education without discrimination, and they should educate both the ruler and the ruled, so that the whole country from top to bottom becomes a person of high moral character. The founder of Confucian was surnamed Kong, and his name was Chiu. His courtesy name was Zhong Ni. He was from Yu Province's Lu country, and after he founded the Confucian school, he was revered as Confucius. Today, he is respectfully called eternal paragon by the later generations of hidden immortal continent. The core of his theory is benevolence. He advocates love, and demands that people should love each other and get along harmoniously. To realize benevolence, one must be tolerant of others, and do not do to others what you do not want done to yourself. And the system or code of conduct that embodies benevolence is restrain oneself and return to etiquette. Confucius's works include poem, book, etiquette, yi, music, and so on. These 5 books are the most famous, and they are often called the 5 classics by hidden immortal continent. Other than Confucius, there are 2 other important figures in Confucian. One is Meng Ku, whose courtesy name is Ziyu. Senior Meng Ku advocates benevolence, and further proposes that the people are the most important, the state comes second, and the ruler is the least important. His ethics is good by nature. The other is Zun Kuang, and people at that time called him Zun Qing. He advocates benevolence and righteousness, and the way of the king, and using virtue to convince people. He also proposed that the ruler is the boat, and the commoners are the water. The water carries the boat, and it also capsizes the boat. These 2 were also respectfully called Zi by later generations, Meng Zi and Zun Zi. The 4 books that hidden immortal continent often refers to, Da Shui, the Golden Mean, the Analects, and Meng Zi, were written by these 3 great scholars. Although the cultivation method of Confucian cultivators was passed down from ancient times, it doesn't matter what it was called in the beginning. After Confucian cultivators appeared, this cultivation method became Confucian cultivators. Xiao Hua understood and sighed. The influence of Confucian cultivators on hidden immortal continent is so deep. These opinions and propositions, although they are not cultivation, they are enough to have an impact on cultivation. This 5 qis unifications should be the manifestation of the noble qi in the chest of Confucian cultivators being condensed to the extreme, right? Fu Jiwen nodded and said, fellow Daoist Xiao is right. Confucian cultivators emphasize on entering the world, which is different from Daoist cultivators. Therefore, all Confucian cultivators have their own opinions and opinions to govern the country and educate the people. This is related to cultivation, but also has nothing to do with it. This 5 chief unifications is the purpose of Confucian cultivators. As long as one cultivates to the realm of 5 chief unifications, one's physical body can become a saint, and one can ascend. Hiss. Hearing this, Xiao Hua sucked in a breath of cold air, as if he had thought of an inconceivable question. He almost blurted out, "Then, the place where Confucian cultivators ascend, is the immortal world. Is this immortal world the same as the immortal world of Taoists?" Ha ha ha. Fu Jiwen laughed heartily. "Fellow Daoist Xiao, if you want me to answer this question, I'm afraid you have to wait for me to cultivate to the realm of 5 chief unifications, ascend to the immortal world, and then return from the immortal world, right?" Hearing this, Xiao Hua touched his nose and helplessly said, "This is indeed true." At this time, at the auction, the people who were as shocked as Fu Jiwen were also boiling with excitement. The people who were familiar with each other were not only whispering, but even the people who didn't know each other were also saying something loudly. If they weren't showing off their talent, then they were showing off their knowledge. -11. Chapter 3283. Fellow Immortals, you can see it clearly. Yu Linfeng loudly said, "This is the word Confucian written by the Confucian school's senior Kong Li Wen. When he wrote this scroll, he had already stepped into the realm of literary star. Therefore, the auspicious clouds of the 5 chief unifications can also attract the starlight from the sky to destroy evil and exorcise demons. If this book was written by Confucius, the sage Kong Li Wen, it would definitely be a clear cloud with a righteous aura. Not to mention the starlight, even if one's eyesight was slightly poor, they might not be able to see it." Fu Jiwen sighed, "Unfortunately, this one has only heard of it. This is the first time I've seen the handwriting of a great Confucian scholar." "Oh, why is that?" Xiao Hua was somewhat puzzled. The Confucian school emphasizes the path of the golden mean. The golden mean is impartial and without fault. The common principle is the natural order of the heavens, the pinnacle of subtlety. Confucius's righteous aura must be quiet and without a trace, without the smoke and fire of the mortal world. This one understands. Xiao Hua nodded. Although he didn't quite understand the meaning of this sentence, within the Tao sect's magical techniques, the brilliant ones didn't necessarily have great power. It was precisely those magical techniques that contained terrifying power that were extremely restrained and wouldn't waste unnecessary spiritual qi. Seeing Yu Linfeng put away the scroll, the soaring righteous aura disappeared. Xiao Hua heard the bidding sounds downstairs and his heart itched. He secretly pondered whether he should also get one to play with. Actually, this path of the golden mean originated from Confucius, but it flourished with Jushi, old man Zhu. Fu Jiwen sorted out his mood, slowly sat down, and said casually, "What? Jushi? Old man Zhu?" Xiao Hua heard this and was suddenly shocked. "Is it the Confucian Zhu family?" "Oh, fellow Xiao actually knows about the Zhu family?" Fu Jiwen was greatly surprised. Xiao Hua laughed, "Hihi, this one can't possibly not know anything. I've heard of this Zhu family. I wonder how they are now. How are they now?" A strange expression appeared on Fu Jiwen's face again. He looked out of the window and said, "The Zhu clan has been passed down since ancient times and has lived in Wuyuan County of Zhuzhou. Back then, Zhu Shi, old master Zhu's name shook the hidden immortal continent. He was known as another great master after Confucius who could be respected as Z. However, after the war between Confucianism and Buddhism, for some unknown reason, the once prosperous Zhu clan actually declined. In the end, it actually disappeared without a trace. Now, there are many surnames of Zhu on the hidden immortal continent, but I have never heard of anyone who is the true descendant of the Zhu clan." Xiao Hua inwardly nodded his head. He already understood that the Zhu family had likely been annihilated by the Tao sect. Their descendants should have been cursed by the Tao sect experts, causing them to slowly decline. It's a pity that the Zhu family has been annihilated, and so has the Zhu family's academic legacy. Fu Jiwen's face was filled with regret. Even now, there are still many students who frequently travel to Zhuzhu's Wuyuan County to study, hoping to discover the heritage of the Zhu clan. That inheritance is second only to Confucius's knowledge. If you can get it, it will definitely be an amazing achievement. Hihi, obtaining and achieving are two different things. Xiao Hua laughed. Fellow Daoist Xiao is right. But since you can get it, you might be able to break through the Zhu clan's academic legacy and become a great scholar. Fu Jiwen also nodded his head. Who wouldn't like this kind of temptation? It's still fame and fortune. Xiao Hua bitterly smiled. While they were talking, the bidding for the authentic work of senior Kong Li Wen had finally reached the climax. Young Master Duanmu, who was opposite Xiao Hua, seemed to be competing with another VIP on the third floor to raise the price, directly raising the price to a terrifying level. Unfortunately, in the end, young Master Duanmu actually had no choice but to give up when the other party only increased the price by one top-grade primeval stone. This made Xiao Hua sigh endlessly. Perhaps the 3 top-grade primeval stones that Xiao Hua used to obstruct him were the last few straws that broke the camel's back. The bidding for the authentic work of great scholar came to an end. The next bidding was still for the items of hidden immortal continent. However, these things were mostly refining techniques of imperial tools, only some great refiners had use for them. Not only were there few people bidding, even Xiao Hua was too lazy to listen. He could be considered to be proficient in the refining techniques of Dao sect and soul cultivators. He also knew a lot of refining techniques of the devil world. Imperial tools, in essence, most of them were derived from Dao sect's tools. Xiao Hua could refine spirit tools. Why would he be greedy for the refining techniques of imperial tools? Young Master Fu. Xiao Hua raised his hand and took out some spirit fruits from the space. He handed them to Fu Jiwen and said, "Try these spirit fruits, and then continue to analyze the remaining 10 great imperial tools with this Xiao." Okay. Fu Jiwen clapped his hands and took the spirit fruit. He gently took a bite, tasted it, and said, "Can I bring some back?" "Of course you can." Xiao Hua nodded his head. However, these spirit fruits are full of heaven and earth primeval qi. People without cultivation are not suitable to eat. This one understands. Fu Jiwen carefully received some and replied, "My wife likes these things, but this one is incompetent and can hardly satisfy her request." "Oh, so it's like that." Xiao Hua understood and said enviously, "It's rare for your wife to be so loving, so this Xiao won't help you." Then, with a wave of Xiao Hua's hand, a large pile of spirit fruits appeared on the table as if they didn't cost primeval stones. "Ah! This is too much." Fu Jiwen was shocked and hurriedly refused. "It's okay, it's just some snacks. Young Master Fu, take it and eat." Xiao Hua casually waved his hand. "This Xiao has troubled you for so long, I'm sorry." "All right." Fu Jiwen was really moved in his heart and happily put all the spirit fruits into his small universe bag. Then, he took out a bright red fruit and said while eating, "Ranked above the mysterious demon chess are the tranquil flute and the heavenly sound zither. The reason why these 2 imperial equipment are placed together is because these 2 imperial equipment were used by the people of the Immortal Palace before the Golden Boy and Jade Girl were conferred into the Immortal Palace. Just now, didn't this one tell fellow Xiao that this music is one of the 5 classics of the Confucian school, and the art of music is also one of the compulsory lessons for students? The tranquil flute and the heavenly sound zither are imperial equipment that mainly use sound attack. Of course, if we were to simply talk about the power of these 2 imperial equipment, I personally believe that they cannot be compared to the demon and god chess. Perhaps it is because everyone thinks that these 2 imperial equipment are elegant, so they place them on the demon and god chess. Speaking of the tranquil flute and the heavenly sound zither, naturally there is a story that everyone knows. Fu Jiwen said again, "In the early years, the Golden Boy and Jade Girl didn't know each other, and they were also enemies. When the 2 were young, they met in the same academy. It wasn't love at first sight, but after a long time, the 2 gradually developed feelings for each other. However, when the 2 were ready to reveal their relationship, they were discovered by their families. The 2 finally understood that their lovers were enemies, and under the opposition of the 2 families, the 2 couldn't get married. Therefore, the 2 had no choice but to stop their studies and fly away. However, since the seed of love was planted, it was inevitable that it would sprout. When the seed grew into a big tree, the golden boy and jade girl couldn't help but inquire about the other party's situation. When the two found out that the other party had rejected countless marriage proposals, and even Jade Girl didn't hesitate to fight with her life, the two's hearts suddenly soften. Just when the two were about to get in touch, the war between the two families broke out. The two families fought in a dangerous situation, and killed each other. Many of their elders died, and even if the two were in love with each other, they were forced to act against each other's families. At the end of the bloody battle, the two finally met, but the two couldn't bear to kill each other. At the crucial moment, the two stepped into the trap set by the two families in advance, and prepared to go to the Yellow Springs together. This trap was set up by taking advantage of the danger of foreign object. After the two fell into the dangerous situation, everyone thought that the two would die without a doubt. But after they fought a bloody battle for a night, they saw the inside of the dangerous situation shine brightly, and then a wonderful music like the sound of nature came out from inside. That music was like rain, and erased the blood in everyone's heart. That music was like the sound of heaven, and all the dead souls were transcended. In this music, everyone was remorseful, and everyone was reflecting. When the music was over, the two families didn't want to kill each other anymore. They shook hands and made peace, and vowed to be good for their families. When the two families made the vow, the golden boy and jade girl each took the tranquil heart flute and heavenly melody zither and flew out of the dangerous situation. The two were in love, and their love was stronger than gold. In the case of dying for love, the heavens were moved, and they actually obtained two imperial equipment in this dangerous situation. It was also these two who relied on these imperial equipment to change the blood feud between the two families. When the two cultivated to the 5-chi unification realm, they received the conferring document from the Immortal Palace, and entered the Immortal Palace to serve. Made up. Hearing Fu Jiwen's words, Xiao Hua unrestrainedly asserted, "Not only is this story cliché, it's also full of flaws. Not to mention that when the two met in the academy, they didn't inquire about each other's background, and not to mention that the two were able to walk together in the battle between the two families, and went into the dangerous situation together, just this imperial equipment. It's impossible to control it right away. The final ending is even more bullshit. I'm afraid that the old woman gave the name of the Immortal Palace to her young granddaughter to make them happy, right?" Fu Jiwen shrugged, and said with a smile, "Maybe. But this story has been circulating in the hidden immortal continent for many years, and no one doubted it. Also, the tranquil heart flute and heavenly melody zither, these two imperial equipment are indeed from the Immortal Palace. It's said that when the Immortal Palace sent soldiers to capture the demons who didn't submit to the Immortal Palace, someone personally saw the power of these two imperial equipment. That's what the Immortal Palace used to trick people, to make people admire the Immortal Palace." Xiao Hua pointed with his hand, and said downstairs, "Just like this Yu Linfeng, saying so much, isn't it just to make people pay more origin stones?" Ha 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 tilde Fu Jiwen laughed, because downstairs, Fu Jiwen was bidding for a phoenix tail zither, and was exaggerating. -11. Chapter 3284. By the way, what do you mean by Immortal Palace capturing unruly demons? Xiao Hua asked in confusion. Does Immortal Palace still care about Hidden Immortal Continent? Hidden Immortal Continent has tens of thousands of countries and hundreds of millions of people. Fu Jiwen explained, these ordinary governance rights are all in the hands of the kings of the 10,000 countries. Immortal Palace naturally won't intervene. Even if the country's power changes, Immortal Palace still won't care. Even if a power different from Confucian cultivators appears, Immortal Palace may not intervene. But if these powers openly compete with Immortal Palace, openly oppose Confucian cultivators, and openly slaughter Confucian cultivators, then Immortal Palace will definitely kill them. According to what I know, 800 years ago, in the Yong province, there was a powerful bull demon who wanted to establish his own empire. Moreover, he treated the common people of the Yong province as his food. This angered the Immortal Palace, and they sent troops to kill that bull demon. Oh, Isn't Bull Demon a demon of Thousand Demons' sacred realm? Can Immortal Palace just kill it? Xiao Hua asked in surprise. The real demons of Thousand Demons' sacred realm have never disdained to come to Hidden Immortal Continent and Western Paradise. The demons that can appear in Hidden Immortal Continent are not the orthodox demons of Thousand Demons' sacred realm. Moreover, Thousand Demons' sacred realm's Great Sage Palace has also publicly announced that any demon that enters Hidden Immortal Continent and Western Paradise will be killed without mercy. Fujiwen said with a smile, so Immortal Palace also didn't show mercy to this bull demon. So that's how it is. Xiao Hua understood. When he was about to ask what the number 1 ranked Imperial equipment was, Yu Linfeng pressed his hand down. The Hidden Immortal Continent's light ball that was just flickering with brilliance immediately dimmed, and the light ball next to it started to glow. Fellow Immortals, all the rare items of Hidden Immortal Continent's Confucian cultivators have been sold. Now, I will take out some rare items from Western Paradise, please bid. As Yu Linfeng's voice fell, dang, dang, dang. The sound of the wooden fish rang out from the ball of light, and the complete Sanskrit chants rang out at the same time. Amitabha. The old monks who were sitting steadily had no choice but to put their palms together and stand up to shout. Namo Amitabha. A Buddhist chant resounded throughout the entire place. The ball of light suddenly expanded and turned into a barefooted Buddha that was several feet tall. He stood in the air, and the swastika character between his brows and the benevolence in his slightly opened eyes instantly attracted everyone's attention. Swoosh! The barefoot Buddha waved his hand, and it came crashing down like a mountain. Dang, 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 dang. A series of hurried sounds of the wooden fish rang out again, and then there was a deathly silence. Whether it was the wooden fish or the Sanskrit chanting, both had disappeared. As the Buddha's huge hand pressed down, the entire Buddha flickered with golden light, and in a breath's time, it turned into fireflies. The fireflies danced in the air for a moment, and then condensed into the outline of the Nirvana world. Just like before, there were more than 10 slightly larger balls of light. These balls of light were different from the ones in the Hidden Immortal Continent. There were no other colors, only pure Buddhist light. Namo Amitabha. Several old monks chanted in unison. As I heard, for a time, Bagafan lived at the top of the Eagle Peak in the royal residence city, along with a group of 1,250 people. They were all arhats, and they were all exhausted, no more worries, truly free. Their hearts were good, and their wisdom was good, like a wise horse or a great dragon. What they had done, they had abandoned all burdens, they had grasped their own benefits, and they were all tied up. They knew that they were free, and their hearts were free. Apart from Ananda, they lived alone and learned to obtain the fruit of preflow. Maha Kasyapa was the highest. Several old monks were solemn as they chanted Buddhist scriptures. The entire auction house was silent for a moment, and then there was a lot of noise. Clearly, these Confucian cultivators were not very interested in Buddhism. Yu Linfeng had an apologetic smile on his face. He raised his hand and saluted to his left and right. My Hidden Immortal Continent is a land of etiquette. Since there are treasures of Buddhism here, we naturally have to respect them. We will wait for a moment, and it won't be too late to bid after these masters finish chanting. Yu Linfeng, hurry up. It's already late. I still have to go back and meditate with my beautiful concubine. Who's here to listen to their nonsense for no reason? Who would have thought that just as Yu Linfeng's voice fell, an irritable voice rang out. Not only was it blaming Yu Linfeng, it was also ridiculing Buddhism's old monks. Yu Linfeng saw that everyone was unhappy and bitterly smiled. Since it's like this, then I will start bidding. With that, Yu Linfeng grabbed with his hand, and a Buddhist light flew out from the outline of the Pure Land and landed in front of Yu Linfeng. When the Buddhist light faded away, it was a monk's staff. That monk's staff had 6 dragons coiled around it, and each dragon head was extremely ferocious. Where was the benevolent appearance of Buddhism? This is one of the 18 treasures of the Pure Land. It is said to be the personal item of the famous Buddhist monk, Miao Chen. These 6 dragons are the protectors of Buddhism. This monk's staff has the power of 6 dragons after using Buddhism's secret technique. And with this six-dragon monk's staff, one can also ride the wind. Yu Linfeng gave a brief introduction, then continued, I'm afraid that only Buddhism's experts can clearly see the mysteries of this monk's staff. I'm not fated with Buddhism, so I can't explain it clearly. The starting price of this monk's staff is 10 upper-grade vitality stones, and each increment is 1 upper-grade vitality stone. I invite the fated person to make a bid. Just as Yu Linfeng finished speaking, someone immediately raised their hand to bid, out of Xiaohua's expectations. Strange. Xiaohua laughed. Weren't there a lot of people making a racket just now? Why didn't they wait for these monks to finish reciting the scriptures before making a move? Could it be that they're trying to sell dog meat under false pretenses? Fu Jiwen looked around and hesitated. He whispered, I'm not sure about this situation. I remember that when I came down last time, there were very few people bidding for these Buddhist artifacts. Most of them weren't sold. Perhaps these people were planted by Zhai Xinglu? Xiaohua frowned. They want the old monks of Buddhism to pay more vitality stones? Not necessarily. Fu Jiwen shook his head. These old monks of Buddhism don't care about ordinary Buddhist artifacts. They're eager to throw the Buddhist artifacts, scriptures, and Buddhas from Nirvana to hidden immortal continent. What they care about are the relics of the eminent monks. Although those relics contain the psyche power of the eminent monks, most of it is the karma of the eminent monks. These karma are extremely difficult to control and can only be transcended using Buddhism. If it's obtained by someone with ill intentions, it may have an adverse effect on Buddhism. Moreover, relics are also the bodies of the eminent monks. Buddhism won't let them wander outside and want to bring them back to Nirvana to be buried. Xiaohua nodded. If that's the case, these bidders should have the cultivation of Buddhism. I'm afraid that's the case. Seeing the auction gradually becoming lively, Fu Jiwen sighed. Buddhism's invasion of Confucian cultivators is very serious. Bronze Pillar country strictly forbids Daoist and Buddhist temples, but it can't stop Confucian cultivators from practicing Buddhism's cultivation method. Many Confucian cultivators who can't make any progress in Confucian cultivation may turn their eyes to Daoist and Buddhist sects, wanting to use them to advance their cultivation. And Buddhism's cultivation methods and heart sutras have always been given away casually. Confucian cultivators with cultivation experience can easily enter the sect. In the long run, hidden immortal continent's Confucian cultivators will no longer be Confucian. Young Master Fu. Xiaohua said with a smile. Don't ask others to worry. Don't you also have the cultivation of Daoist? Fu Jiwen hesitated slightly and shook his head slightly. My situation is different from theirs and also different from fellow Xiao. All right. Xiaohua didn't pursue the matter. After all, this matter already involved Fu Jiwen's secret. But at this moment, Xiaohua suddenly thought of something. Oh right, young Master Fu, didn't you say that there would be flying imperial devices from hidden immortal continent? Why aren't there any? The last time I came, I saw Bright Moon Palace bid for quite a few flying imperial devices. This time, I'm afraid there aren't any left. Fu Jiwen said hesitantly. Or perhaps, when the last few imperial devices are up for auction, we'll bid again. Forget it, let's wait and see. Xiaohua nodded and looked at the auction. After the 6 dragon staff, there were some other Buddhist artifacts, or prayer beads, or alms bowls, or incense burners. There was even a water bottle with a willow stuck on it. Seeing the aqua vase appear, Xiaohua almost jumped up. However, when he saw the numerous sprouts on the willow tree that were trying their best to grow, he sat down. It was very obvious that the willow tree branch was a living thing. Perhaps it was broken off by some little bird at dusk and inserted into the aqua vase. After thinking for a while, Xiaohua asked again, Young Master Fu, do you know what the Buddhist sect's bhikkhus' 18 objects are? Of course I know. Fu Jiwen said very casually. The 18 objects are the 18 objects that Buddhist sect's eminent monks often carry with them. These 18 objects are the Buddhist sect's eminent monks' protection. Unfortunately, one of them has committed a minor sin. Among them, there are 3 grades, heavy, medium, and light. That is, Li Sanyi is shedding, which is a heavy sin. Li Bo is Tuji Luo, which is a medium sin. The rest are light sins. These ordinary Buddhist sect monks only use 6 kinds of things: Li San Yi, Li Bo, and water pouch. These 6 kinds of things are known as the bhikkhu's 6 objects. Although this humble one did not deliberately listen to these things, the monks who are everywhere often preach them. This humble one listened and understood. Immediately after, Fujiwen looked at the kasaya that he was bidding for. He pointed at it and said, "In fact, these 18 objects are what ordinary people need in life. They are yang ji, which is a wooden chip used to remove the stench in the mouth. Bathing bean, which is a powder ground from soybeans, beans, and peas, which is used for bathing and washing. Li San Yi, which refers to the 3 kinds of clothes of Sangha, Udoro, and Antuor. Li Bo, which refers to the army's 3 kinds of clothes. Li Bo, which is a water bottle used to hold water for washing or drinking. Li Bo, which is also known as a measuring vessel, which is used to hold food. Li Bo, which is a cloth on the ground or on the bed when sitting or lying down. Li Bo, which is a staff with a Li Bo on the head. When walking, the Li Bo vibrates to alert people of insects on the road, or when begging to attract people's attention. Incense burner, which is an instrument used to burn incense and invite Buddhas. Li Bo, which is also known as a water filter, a cloth used to filter insects in water. Li Bo, which is a cloth used to wipe hands, including face wipes, body wipes, and feet wipes. Knife, which is used to cut clothes, shave hair, and cut claws. Li Bo, which is a flintlock used to strike a fire. Li Bo, which is a tool used to pluck out nose hairs or thorns. Li Bo, which is a bed made of rope, which is convenient for sitting in meditation. -11. Chapter 3285. So that's how it is. Xiao Hua stared blankly for a moment before bursting into laughter. I thought the 18 objects were some profound things, but it turns out, it's just like this. However, the Buddhist artifacts of the Buddhist sect need to be supported by the Buddhist Dharma. They need to be constantly nourished by their psyche power, so most of the Buddhist artifacts come from these 18 objects. Fujiwen pointed out the strangeness, because these 18 objects don't leave the monk's side every day. Forget it tilde thinking about the kasaya on top of his Buddha Ara, the 9 dragon staff, and even the clear water bottle, all of which were things that the old monk never left his body for who knows how many years ago. Xiao Hua felt a bit sick of them. However, since they were all worn by the Buddha Ara, Xiao Hua didn't think of throwing them away. The fun is here. Just when Xiao Hua was feeling disgusted by the Buddhist artifacts and was somewhat distracted, Fujiwen suddenly stood up from the chair and walked to the window with a smile. Oh! Xiao Hua was also curious. He looked outside and saw that there were dozens of jade boxes lined up in front of Yulin Foam. Each jade box was wide open, and inside were sariras as big as chicken eggs and as small as soybeans. These sariras were of different quality. Some emitted pure Buddhist light while others emitted multicolored light. Not only Xiao Hua, who had already condensed a 4th-stage lotus platform, could tell at a glance, but even a Confucian scholar who didn't have the cultivation of a Buddhist sect could also tell. However, Yu Linfeng's voice sounded again, "Fellow immortals, these are the sariras of the Buddhist monks that my Zhai Xinglu painstakingly found near Yu province. As for the use of these sariras, there are Buddhist monks here, so I can't say it clearly. However, if there's anyone who doesn't know, you can go to my Zhai Xinglu's place to look for it. All I have to say is that the Buddhist light is incomparably pure and can perfectly blend with the righteous energy of my Confucian cultivator. The base price of each of these Buddhist relics is 1 top-grade prime val stone. Damn it. Xiao Hua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This is the hidden immortal continent R, 1 top-grade prime val stone. What kind of concept is that? Just now, the true work of the great Confucian scholar only used a top-grade prime val stone as the base price. How could these relics have a base price of 1 top-grade prime val stone? What was more special was that these relics were of different qualities. Zhai Xinglu's starting price was 1 supreme-grade primordial stone. Wasn't that clearly bullying? However, Someone had really stepped forward to be bullied by Zhai Xinglu. As soon as Yu Linfeng finished speaking, a voice shouted, "I'll add 10 top-grade source stones for that untainted relic. This old man will add 50 upper-grade primordial stones. No, a relic of this quality can raise my nature energy by 2 grades. I'll give you 2 supreme-grade primordial stones. Ha ha ha." Fu Jiwen laughed. These people are really not afraid of trouble. Last time, when everyone made fun of these old monks, they still cared about their reputation and added upper-grade primordial stones one by one. This time, they actually added 2 top-grade primordial stones at once. Are they sure that these old monks are going to take action? Xiao Hua faintly smiled and asked, if the old monk were to go into silent meditation, this Xiao would like to see how they will deal with this. That won't happen. Fu Jiwen shook his head and said, Buddhism emphasizes that monks don't lie. Whatever they say should definitely be believed. According to this one's knowledge, every time Zhai Xinglu holds this kind of auction, they will definitely be present. All the relics will never be left behind. All of them will be bought by them. Monks don't lie. Say that again after you've seen people like Han Zhu. Xiao Hua was rather disapproving of this sentence, but hearing the end, Xiao Hua was flabbergasted. Then how much primordial stones will they spend? Fu Jiwen snorted and said, "Fellow Daoist Xiao, why don't you see who is behind them?" Who? Xiao Hua seemed to have understood something, but he still asked. Behind them are the kind men and women of Burial Immortal Continent and Western Paradise Continent. The daily offerings of these trillions of kind men and women are unimaginable to ordinary people. These monks are relying on these offerings to straighten their backs and dare to challenge here. This is why they dare to say that every relic must be bought. Fu Jiwen sneered, it is also because of this, the relics here, these monks must buy them. Otherwise, they won't be able to answer to these kind men and women. Sigh. Xiao Hua listened and looked at the several monks whose expressions were calm as if they were not affected by the increasing bidding price of the relics. He sighed and said, respectfully welcoming the relics of the eminent monks back to Western Paradise Continent and letting the departed souls of these eminent monks rest in peace, this is originally a very good thing. If both sides were kind, it would be a good thing. But now one side is trying their best to raise the price, secretly rejoicing in their own gains, while the other side is fearless and unhesitatingly taking out the offerings of others. This is already not a good thing to respectfully welcome, but an evil thing to flaunt. I'm afraid this is one of the methods Buddhism uses to attract believers in Burial Immortal Continent, right? Fu Jiwen thought carefully and of course also felt sad. He nodded and said, fellow Daoist Xiao is right. Even if this one is just a bystander, watching the show, it seems like I'm also helping the tyrant. That's natural. Xiao Hua nodded and looked at the entire Bright Moon Palace. And this Zhai Xinglu is the chief evil and also the instigator. The secular people are right. Money is the source of all evil. Zhai Xinglu accumulates wealth like this. At this point, Fu Jiwen did not dare to talk nonsense anymore. Seeing that the monk from the Buddhist sect did not respond, the several Confucian scholars who had been aggressively bidding immediately lost their confidence. They began to raise the price one by one. However, the number of people who raised the price also decreased. Quite a number of people chose to withdraw. After all, not everyone was willing to try this kind of stimulation that was similar to beating drums and passing flowers. Amitabha. Suddenly, one of the few old monks who looked relatively young took a step forward. He put his palms together and bowed to the surroundings. These relics are something that my Buddhist sect must obtain. I'm sure everyone already knows that. As for the meaning of the relics, this old monk also does not want to say much. These are the wandering souls of my Buddhism sect. This old monk is under the orders of the Buddha Lord to welcome them back to Western Paradise Continent. These relics can increase a Confucian cultivator's noble spirit, but correspondingly, the negative karma in the relics will also be added to the cultivator's body. Everyone here does not understand the secret arts of my Buddhism sect and does not know how to eliminate negative karma and get rid of negative karma. In the future, you will definitely be tired of this negative karma. Therefore, This old monk advises everyone here that greed is easy to breed and negative karma is difficult to eliminate. Practicing honestly is the right path. As he spoke, the monk pointed at the dozens of relics floating in the air. These are the wandering souls of my Buddhist sect's Arhat. My Buddha Lord is willing to redeem each wandering soul with 3 supreme-grade primordial stones. If anyone here is willing to pay a higher price than my Buddhism sect, then please go ahead. My Arhat's wandering souls cannot rest in peace in Western Paradise continent. My Buddhist sect's hundreds of millions of benefactors who sincerely worship Buddha will also not be at ease. This monk. Upstairs, Fujiwen was stunned. He actually dares to threaten? Looks like the Buddhism sect also has no surplus food. Xiao Hua sighed and looked at Yu Linfeng. He knew this monk's threat was nothing. The only one who would suffer losses was Zhai Xinglu. Yu Linfeng's brows frowned a little, then he laughed and said loudly, "The Buddhist sect's master has already made a big bid. I wonder which immortal friend wants to increase the price. How can there be anyone who wants to charge forward?" Fujiwen lost interest and walked back to the chair from the window. He sat down and said, "This is hundreds of supreme-grade primordial stones, who can afford it?" Just now, this monk already said those harsh words. If some idiot increases the price by 1 supreme-grade primordial stone and these monks really give up, wouldn't this idiot cry himself to death? What if I take this idiot? Xiao Hua looked at the dozens of relics, his heart beating wildly, and he almost blurted out. Fujiwen was disdainful. Fellow Daoist Xiao is neither a Confucian cultivator nor a member of the Buddhism sect. Why would you take this idiot? If you want to be, it should be someone from Zhai Xinglu. Hiss. Xiao Hua sucked in a breath of cold air and hurriedly suppressed the greed in his heart. Nonsense, it was a blessing to have 3 cultivators, but from another point of view, it was a great tragedy. In this conflict between Confucians and Buddhists, he might be caught in the middle. He might as well be a Daoist loose cultivator. Why would he expose his Buddhism sect cultivation for no reason? That's true. Xiao Hua nodded and looked at the scene. He smiled and said, "I bet that Zhai Xinglu will definitely test it out." Fujiwen shook his head slightly. "I don't think so, because there's really no need. Let's wait and see." Xiao Hua smiled but didn't say anything. Sure enough, after Yu Linfeng's words fell, no one spoke. After half a cup of tea's time, Yu Linfeng said helplessly, "If no one bids, this old man will add 3 supreme-grade primordial stones for each relic." A slightly shaky voice came from downstairs. "Damn it." Fujiwen almost jumped out of his chair. This is too fake. The people downstairs, can they have hundreds of supreme-grade primordial stones? According to the rules, they have no right to bid at all. Haha, there's no need to be so angry. Xiao Hua smiled. This is just like how young Master Duanmu tested me. Zhai Xinglu must give the Buddhism sect face, and the Buddhism sect must give Zhai Xinglu an answer. This auction is just a question and answer, nothing more. And this Xiao is sure that the bidder will definitely get something from this supreme-grade primordial stone. Sure enough, just as Xiao Hua thought, the monk said lightly, "This old monk will add 1 supreme-grade primordial stone for each relic." That person didn't make a sound. Yu Linfeng laughed and waved his hand. The dozens of jade boxes closed at the same time and flew to the monk. The monk bowed and said, "Amitabha, many thanks to Zhai Xinglu for your help." -11. Chapter 3286. With a wave of the monk's yellow robes, the dozens of jade boxes disappeared at the same time. Then, with another wave of his hand, a small cosmos bag flew out of his sleeve and slowly landed in front of Yu Linfeng. "This is the ransom for the dozens of Buddhas. Yu Linfeng, please check it." "Monks don't lie. I know that." Yu Linfeng naturally wouldn't check it and accepted it with a smile. Then, when he saw the old monks turn around and leave without a word, he hurriedly shouted, "I'll see you off, masters." Amitabha. The monks left, but a Buddhist chant that was as clear as spring water was left in the auction. Haha, an eminent monk is indeed an eminent monk. Although this Buddhist chant didn't contain a trace of psychokinesis, It was enough to hear one's heart. Yu Linfeng hurriedly laughed and said, "They turned around and left without leaving a speck of dust behind. Since the masters have left, Zhai Xinglu's auction is about to end. The treasures from the Pure Land have already fallen to the ground. Zhai Xinglu still has some items from the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm. However, the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm is too dangerous for the human race. These items are not even comparable to the ones from the Pure Land. Of course, these few items are definitely the best of the best. That's why Zhai Xinglu has always placed the items from the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm at the end of the auction. Come on." Yu Linfeng finished speaking and waved his hand. Caw! A bird's cry that shook the entire place was suddenly heard. An extremely small light spot flew over from afar. In the blink of an eye, the light spot transformed into a bird that was several feet large. This bird looked like an eagle, but it wore a golden crown on its head. Under the golden crown, the majestic eagle's eyes shone with a light that couldn't be looked at directly. Boom! The bird spread its wings as it landed, and thousands of streams of light flew out from its huge wings. When the bird stretched its neck and let out a long cry, the thousands of streams of light rushed into the outline of the Thousand Demon Sacred Realm and turned into a few spots of light. Fellow Daoist Xiao. On the balcony, Fu Jiwen smiled bitterly. "I lost the bet earlier. I admit defeat." "Haha, actually, you didn't lose." Xiao Hua looked at the bird's shadow with interest and said with a smile, "It's just that you never had the chance to come into contact with these scheming people, so you don't know what they're thinking. A loss is a loss." Fu Jiwen waved his hand. "Fine, since you've lost, then tell me, what is the name of this bird? Why can it replace the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm?" Xiao Hua pointed. Contrary to Xiao Hua's expectations, Fu Jiwen actually shook his head and said, "I know very little about the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm, and I don't know what this flying beast is. If I'm not wrong, then this beast should be a great sage of the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm. Only a great sage can represent the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm." "Alright, then what is a great sage?" "Saints are supreme beings." Fu Jiwen explains, "Our hidden immortal continent saints are supreme beings in the human realm. The great sage of the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm is the title of the most powerful demon." Xiao Hua was naturally not satisfied with this kind of answer. He waved his hand and said, "If you don't know, then you don't know. It seems like you really don't know." "It's not just me who doesn't know." Fu Jiwen said with a smile, "The Thousand Demons Sacred Realm is a place where thousands of demons gather. If we humans go there, we'll be their food. In my hidden immortal continent, other than the Great Grandmaster and above seniors who have the qualifications to explore the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm, no one else has ever been there. If fellow Xiao asks 100 people, it's already not bad if one person can answer clearly." "Alright, let's not talk about this anymore." Xiao Hua smiled faintly. "You better reveal the mystery of the top 10 Imperial equipment. I'm looking forward to it. I wonder what the number 1 Imperial equipment will be." "What can it be?" Fu Jiwen smiled mysteriously and said, "Fellow Xiao has never practiced martial arts before, so I'm afraid you don't know what it means to practice the blade for 100 days, practice the spear for 1,000 days, practice the sword for 10,000 days, right?" Xiao Hua was startled and asked curiously, "Could it be that young Master Fu has practiced martial arts before?" "Of course." Fu Jiwen said proudly, "Hidden Immortal Continent's Confucian scholars all have to practice the 6 arts. Martial arts, sword arts, and so on are all things that must be learned." "I understand." Xiao Hua nodded. "The top of the top 10 Imperial equipment is the sword." "Right." Fu Jiwen said with a smile, "The sword is an ancient sacred item, the most revered and noble, worshipped by humans and gods. It's the ancestor of short weapons, a weapon for close combat. With its profound Dao skills, it became a legend. In fact, because it's light and convenient to carry, it's beautiful to wear, and it's quick to use, the Hidden Immortal Continent's various dynasties, princes, emperors, marquises, scholars, swordsmen, merchants, and commoners, all of them take pride in it. Since ancient times, the sword and its skills have been unhindered in the battlefield, dominating the martial arts world, establishing a country, and upholding justice. Thus, it has been passed down to this day, and is still loved by the people of the world. With its glorious history, it's deeply rooted in people's hearts, and can be passed down without decline. The top of the top 10 imperial equipment is precisely the tender like water sword. Tender like water sword. Xiao Hua seemed to have understood something. Since ancient times, the most difficult thing to erase is the grace of a beauty. The sorrow of a beauty's feelings is like flowing water. If it can't be cut off, it will be chaotic. This tender like water sword is truly outstanding. That's right. This tender like water sword is like its name, a soft sword. The entire sword is transparent like water. When placed in water, it's the same as water. The sword's body is warm. After this sword is cut off, it can automatically fuse back together. Just like feelings. It can't be truly cut off. I'm afraid it's not that simple. Xiao Hua said thoughtfully, if it's only like this, how can it be the number one imperial equipment? Hehe, the sharpest thing in this world is tenderness, and the most hurtful thing in this aristocratic family is also tenderness. This tender like water sword can open the heavens with water droplet. When Fujiwen talked about tenderness, his eyes unexpectedly also showed tenderness. As long as there are still feelings in their hearts, they can't escape the attack of this tender like water sword. It's said that in the past, the hidden immortal continent's pear blossom fairy was injured and abandoned by the nobles of the immortal palace. In a rage, she held the tender like water sword and killed her way to the immortal palace. In front of the southern heavenly gate, her sword soared through the sky and annihilated tens of thousands of heavenly soldiers. When Empress Dowager led the immortal palace's Star River to kill the fairy's sword cut the Star River into two. Unfortunately, this tender like water sword was broken by the starlight in the Star River and turned into a morning star that disappeared into the horizon. The pear blossom fairy even charged into the Star River with hatred, and her body and soul were destroyed. From then on, no matter what imperial equipment was born, it would be difficult for it to surpass. This tender like water sword has always been listed as the number one imperial equipment. Xiao Hua sighed. This is another sad but beautiful story. I wonder if this story is the number one imperial equipment story? Or is it tender like water sword that is the number one imperial equipment? What's the difference? Fujiwen laughed. The things you can't get are always the best. The faintly discernible legends are always the most beautiful. The memories in a person's heart are always the most profound. Strange Tilda hearing this, Xiao Hua suddenly thought of his own wishful staff and immediately interrupted. The ancestor of short weapons, the staff is also the number one weapon. Why isn't there a staff in the top 10 imperial equipment? Staff? Fujiwen scratched his head and laughed. Fellow Daoist Xiao must be joking. A staff, isn't it just a staff? How can it be in the top 10 imperial equipment? Forget it, I won't play the lute to a cow with you. Xiao Hua casually waved his hand, but before he could continue, his expression changed and he hurriedly looked at the auction hall. In front of Yu Linfeng, there was a jade slip. That's right, it was a jade slip commonly seen in the Dawn Rain continent. At this moment, it was floating in front of Yu Linfeng. Yu Linfeng said, fellow Taoists, this item is the jade I used by the ancient Taoists before they were destroyed by us Confucian cultivators. It should have been placed in the Daoist trifling item auction, but because this item was obtained from the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm, it wasn't taken out until now. This item's inspection method is different from the jade eye. After Zhai Xinglu obtained it, we searched through the ancient records and found out that this item was called a jade slip. After that, Zhai Xinglu specially found a Daoist expert and used their unique divine sense to inspect it. Only then did we find out that it was a 5 elements escape technique. Oh, to be more specific, it should be a commonly seen high-level escape technique in the hidden immortal continent called the water avoidance technique. This item is really rare. At least, I've never heard of it before. According to the person who inspected it, after practicing this escape technique, one can borrow the water of heaven and earth's spiritual energy to fly. It's even more powerful than us using the water avoidance technique to travel in the Jianghu. When the Daoist sect was flourishing, it must have been extremely precious. However, now that the Daoist sect has declined, according to that person, There isn't even a person who can use the elementary water escape technique. How could there be someone who needs this higher level escape technique? Even when Zhai Xinglu saw that this item was of little value and wanted to sell it to that person bitterly smiled and refused. Thus, Zhai Xinglu could only bring it here to bid. It's a bit strange. Although Xiao Hua was excited, he had already calmed down. He pinched his chin and said curiously, "Why did this guy say such a secret so clearly? Isn't he afraid that no one will bid?" "Ha ha." Fu Jiwen at the side laughed and said, "This is the third time I've heard this. This whatever jade slip is the same as the amplifying thunder wood that I want, no one will bid for it. If not for it being more rare than the amplifying thunder wood and having a higher base price, this guy would have already taken it out when the bidding started. What's the base price of this item?" Xiao Hua hurriedly asked. "1 piece of top-grade primeval stone." Fu Jiwen was really familiar with it and said without hesitation. Xiao Hua cursed loudly, "Damn it, this is indeed a rare item worth hoarding. This kind of broken jade slip is actually sold for 1 piece of top-grade primeval stone? Yes, this item is just like the golden core cultivation method. In some people's eyes, this item is trash. But in the eyes of others, this item is a peerless treasure." Zhai Xinglu fancied this point and would rather smash it in their hands than lower the price. The base price of this jade slip is 50 top-grade primeval stones. Without waiting for Fu Jiwen to finish speaking, Yu Linfeng cut the base price of the jade slip in half. "Damn it!" Fu Jiwen immediately jumped up. "This young master has waited for this auction 3 times and that amplifying thunder wood didn't even lower the price of a single primeval stone. How can this jade slip be lowered just like that? This is too unfair." -11. Chapter 3287. Hee, it's not unfair. It's your bad character. Xiao Hua smiled and raised his hand. "I bid 51 high-grade source stones." "Ayo, fellow Xiao." Fu Jiwen hurriedly shouted, "You bid too early, others can see that you're determined to get it." "That's right. Since I'm determined to get it, then I naturally have to let others know." Xiao Hua squinted his eyes and looked at the opposite side, where Duanmu young master was. 52 high-grade source stones. Sure enough, Duanmu young master's voice leisurely came. Xiao Hua confidently said, 53. Fu Jiwen naturally understood Xiao Hua's meaning. This Duanmu young master was probably the biggest obstacle to Xiao Hua bidding for this jade slip, or even the only obstacle. No matter when Xiao Hua opened his mouth, Duanmu young master would definitely return the favor from last time. Since that was the case, why didn't Xiao Hua open his mouth earlier? Ari, what a pity. Fu Jiwen stomped his feet. "Fellow Xiao, I'm afraid there are even better things later. You let him return it too early." "Not early, not early." Xiao Hua also leisurely said, "I've benefited a lot from this auction. This item will be the last item to bid. I won't be able to use any of the items in the future. Besides, even if there are more in the future, I'll just continue to bid. Who would be afraid of them?" Sure enough, just as Xiao Hua thought, Duanmu young master only bid once and didn't say anything else. It seemed to be to return Xiao Hua's favor. And somewhere in Bright Moon Palace, Zhu Qing, who had been watching the entire auction with a sullen face, sighed again. "Ari, such a good favor, why let it go so easily? Could it be that Xiao Hua really needs this jade slip? And his strength is so strong that he's not afraid of the Duanmu family? Okay, this senior bids 53 high-grade source stones." Yu Linfeng saw that the useless jade slip was finally sold as he wished, and couldn't help but be overjoyed. He clapped his hands and said, "If no one bids, this item will be this senior's." 55 high-grade source stones. Just as Xiao Hua was about to call out Xiao Yi with a smile, another voice came from downstairs. Xiao Hua's face turned cold. Looking up, it was the person who bid for the golden core cultivation method. "Are you crazy?" Without waiting for Xiao Hua to open his mouth, Fu Jiwen scolded in sympathy. "Fellow Daoist Xiao has already helped him bid for a gold core cultivation method. How can he repay kindness with enmity? Or perhaps, his identity as a cultivator of the Dao sect has already been exposed, so he can't add insult to injury." Young Master Fu, you're using the wrong words to make things worse. You should be trying to create new problems. Xiao Hua said coldly. He, that's right, that's right. Fu Jiwen chuckled. After chatting with Xiao Hua for so long, Fu Jiwen felt like they were old friends at first sight. Unconsciously, he had already regarded Xiao Hua as an old friend. He won't be bidding again soon, Xiao Hua said indifferently. He raised his hand and said, 56 high-grade primordial stones. Immediately after, he muttered, could it be that this guy is blaming me for not helping him bid for the golden core cultivation method? Or do you think that I'm making fun of you? No matter what, you made me spend 2 high-grade primordial stones for nothing. Good, this fellow Daoist has increased the price. Fellow Daoist downstairs, are you going to increase the price? Yu Linfeng appeared excited again, as if every increase in price could excite him. Ah! Just as Yu Linfeng was anticipating the increase in price, below the balcony, the cultivator who had just bid screamed for no reason, and then resisted the urge to say anything else. Fellow Daoist Xiao? Fu Jiwen's eyes darted around, looking at Xiao Hua as he said in a low voice. Using virtue to convince people, using virtue to convince people. Xiao Hua laughed mischievously. I've always advocated using virtue to convince people. Fellow Daoist, are you going to increase the price? Yu Linfeng was rather surprised, but he didn't have any other thoughts. After all, the Bright Moon Palace was surrounded by many experts from Star Plucking Tower, and they weren't afraid of others causing trouble. Since no one shouted to stop, it couldn't have been done by that mysterious senior upstairs. The Daoist cultivator who instigated the internal strife naturally wouldn't bid, and even the meddlesome people in the surroundings didn't dare to make a sound. Young Master Duanmu was even more bewildered as he looked at the similarly illusory window in front of him, thinking about something unknown. Good. Yu Linfeng's anticipated climax didn't come, and he could only somewhat dejectedly point his finger, and the jade slip slowly flew towards Xiao Hua's window. Seeing the jade slip fly towards him, Xiao Hua had the urge to use heaven and earth in the sleeve, as if only by holding this item in his hand would his heart be at ease. Of course, Xiao Hua's current magic power wasn't enough to support heaven and earth in the sleeve, and the current Xiao Hua didn't seem to be as impetuous as he was back in the Dawn Rain continent. He only looked, indifferently looked, and his eyes didn't move from the jade slip at all, as if he already had a card up his sleeve, and wasn't afraid of anyone coming to snatch it from him. It was as if he was completely certain that even if this jade slip was snatched away by someone, he would still be able to take it back. Unknowingly, Xiao Hua, who seemed to be a young lad, had already begun to transform, whether it was his temperament or bearing. Perhaps it was because of time, or perhaps it was because of a great change. In short, at this moment, Xiao Hua, who hadn't recovered much magic power, and whose divine abilities weren't even 30% of his peak, actually had a confidence he never had before. Xiao Yi. Xiao Hua took the jade slip and said, should this old man hand over the origin stones to you now? Xiao Yi answered and entered, then hastily waved her hand and said, reporting to Senior, as long as there's a bid below a supreme grade origin stone, Senior doesn't need to immediately hand over the origin stones. This is a kind of treatment for distinguished guest. No need. Xiao Hua stretched out his hand, took out a supreme grade origin stone, and handed it to Xiao Yi, saying, this kind of treatment doesn't have any practical meaning. Senior, you'll soon know the treatment for distinguished guest. Xiao Yi took the origin stone, pursed her lips, and smiled, then lowered her head and left. What kind of treatment do distinguished guests have? Xiao Hua used his divine sense to enter the jade slip, carefully probing it, and asked Fu Jiwen again. Fu Jiwen didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He spread out his hands and said, fellow Daoist, I'm just joking. This is the first time I've entered a distinguished guest's room. How could I know the treatment for distinguished guests? However, after thinking for a moment, he probed again. If it's the most obvious treatment, it might be when bidding for the last few treasures. After a certain price, the cultivators downstairs aren't allowed to bid. They're probably afraid that they can't afford the origin stones, so they're blindly shouting their En. Xiao Hua answered indifferently. Fu Jiwen couldn't clearly see Xiao Hua's appearance in the stardust, But he also understood that Xiao Hua was probing the water escape technique. After the time it takes to brew a cup of tea, Xiao Hua put the jade slip into the space, and handed it over to the green-robed Xiao Hua to comprehend. At this moment, Xiao Hua was really happy. Although this water escape technique wasn't a high-grade water escape technique like Yu Linfeng said, it was still a mid-grade water escape technique. After fusing with the water, it was an escape technique that relied on the water energy of heaven and earth to fly. In other words, as long as it was a place with water energy of heaven and earth, one could use this escape technique to fly. It wasn't like before where there was real water to be able to escape. As for the water avoidance technique from the West Sea, Xiao Hua had already finished comprehending it with the Buddha's Sariya. That technique was very strange and required the so-called origin energy to be used. However, Xiao Hua didn't know what origin energy was, so he couldn't test it out. Xiao Hua closed his eyes for a moment and pondered a little. He knew that although these two water escape techniques weren't of the same origin, the realms of the escape techniques were connected. If he finished cultivating the water avoidance technique, he could naturally continue to cultivate the mid-grade water escape technique. Oh, right, isn't there someone in front of us who knows about origin energy? It's a waste not to ask. Xiao Hua glanced at Fu Jiwen, who was also silently looking at the auction, and came to a realization. He hurriedly smiled and said, "Young Master Fu, I still have a question to ask. Fellow Daoist Xiao, why are you so polite? Please ask." Fu Jiwen hurriedly moved his gaze away from the window and said with a smile. Xiao Hua said, "I would like to ask, what is origin energy? Is it the magic power of Confucian cultivators?" "Yes." Fu Jiwen said curiously, "Taoism is magic power, Buddhism is psychokinesis, Confucian cultivators are naturally origin energy, but why do some demons' cultivation techniques also mention origin energy?" Xiao Hua asked curiously, "This is what I don't understand." "Oh, I understand." Fu Jiwen said with a smile, "Does fellow Daoist know about the 9 grades of origin energy and the 27th rank?" "I naturally know about this." Xiao Hua nodded. "Then it's easy to explain," Fu Jiwen explained, "because the 3 continents have magic power, psychokinesis, and origin energy." "Oh, I'm not very clear about the 1000 demons sacred realm. This kind of classification is too heterogeneous. However, some cultivation techniques can be used regardless of magic power, psychokinesis, or origin energy. Therefore, Confucian cultivators use origin energy to refer to all magic power, psychokinesis, and origin energy. So it's like that." Xiao Hua nodded and said, "These Confucian cultivators are really tyrannical. Origin energy is 9 grades. The substitution of origin energy is convenient for them. It can't be helped. Who asked the hidden immortal continent to have the most Confucian cultivators?" Fu Jiwen smiled, then pointed outside the window and said, "Fellow Daoist Xiao, didn't you just say that you want to look for flying equipment? Now they have already started to bid for flying demonic beasts. Why don't you take a look?" "Okay." Xiao Hua responded and looked outside the window. However, he was ecstatic in his heart. Since magic power can be used as origin energy, then when his magic power is fully recovered, he can naturally use the water escape technique. In other words, he can already use the complete 5 elements escape technique. His light escape technique cultivation has indeed taken a solid step. At this moment, in front of Yu Linfeng, there is a row of over 10 eggs of different sizes, which are also emitting different kinds of bewitching brilliance. The shape of these eggs is as strange as the halo. Some are oval, some are flat, some are gourd-shaped, and there are even some that are long. There are even some eggs that are faintly flickering, as if these eggs are lightly breathing. These are demonic beast eggs. Xiao Hua squinted his eyes and asked Fu Jiwen in a low voice. -11. Chapter 3288. Without waiting for Fu Jiwen to answer, Yu Linfeng unfolded his fan and pretended to wave it a few times. He smiled and said, "What fellow immortals are looking at is naturally the eggs of the extremely precious birds and beasts of the 1000 demons sacred realm. Everyone knows that the Confucian cultivators of the hidden immortal continent can't be compared to the demons of the thousand demons sacred realm. They can't rely on their physical bodies to fly long distances. They can only rely on flying tools and birds. Generally, flying tools requires primeval stones and primeval energy. Sometimes, it also consumes divine sense. Birds for transportation don't need to be so troublesome. As long as you communicate with them, you don't need to think too much. You can sleep and be taken away by the birds. What's more, a well-trained bird is a great help to us. They can also help you kill any evil cultivators you encounter. And these birds and flying beasts are best raised from young. Sign a blood contract with them before they hatch. If you erase the blood contract with the birds and flying beasts, then sign a new one. The bird spirituality will disappear a lot. The eggs of the birds and flying beasts in front of me are all from the thousand demons sacred realm. They weren't raised in captivity by the hidden immortal continent. Therefore, you don't need to worry about the spirituality of these birds and flying beasts after they hatch. Of course, if any fellow immortal is unlucky and can't hatch the eggs, or if the hatched demonic beast doesn't have spirituality, my Zhai Xinglu won't take responsibility. Ha ha ha. Yu Linfeng teased a few words. He flung his fan and said, "The first egg is a cloud crane egg. The starting price is 5 high-grade primeval stones. 6, 10. Following Yu Linfeng's words, the entire auction hall became lively again. After all, these flying beasts were commonly used. Many people came here for these eggs. How could they be patient? They hurriedly bid. That fellow Daoist Xiao. Fu Jiwen stole a glance at Xiao Hua. Seeing that he didn't do anything, he said with a smile, "I want to bid for a wood-attributed green crane. I hope fellow Daoist Xiao can help me." Xiao Hua smiled and said, "No problem, you can bid as much as you want. It's not what fellow Daoist Xiao thinks." Fu Jiwen said with some shame, "Dao friend helped me bid for the thunder amplification wood, so I should have given all these high-grade primeval stones to Dao friend. However, I have been thinking that these upper-grade primordial stones are not enough to compensate fellow Daoist. I don't know how I can compensate or repay fellow Daoist. But now, I'm not paying attention to fellow Daoist's gift, and I'm bidding for the birds instead." "All right." Xiao Hua hurriedly waved his hand. "There's no need to mention this again. Just now, young Master Fu gave me a lot of pointers, and that's more than enough to repay him. Young Master Fu, you can bid as much as you want. There's no need to think too much about it." "All right." Fu Jiwen sighed. "Actually, the reason why I bid for the green crane is because I want to wait for my wife to escape, and take her to travel the world." "Escape?" Xiao Hua raised his eyebrows, thinking that he had misheard, but Fu Jiwen seemed to have blurted it out. His face was a little embarrassed, and he immediately looked out the window, not saying another word. Since Fu Jiwen didn't say anything, Xiao Hua naturally wouldn't ask any more. Soon, the price of the cloud crane egg reached 23 high-grade primordial stones, and it was bought by a cultivator downstairs. Following that, the fire snake, blue luan, cloud howl, chick yi, shi hong, and other bird beasts were all bought by 20 or so high-grade primordial stones. Unfortunately, these bird beasts were not of the wood attribute. Fu Jiwen didn't say anything. Fu Jiwen, who always looked calm, was actually a little anxious. He stood in front of the windowsill and looked at the decreasing number of beast eggs. Fortunately, when the third last beast egg was auctioned, it was the wood attribute cloud crane that Fu Jiwen wanted, and he almost couldn't wait to bid. His bid didn't matter, but everyone was a little hesitant. After all, everyone had seen the bid for the water escape technique. Who would dare to compete with a virtuous senior? After a slight awkward silence, this cloud crane was actually bought by Fu Jiwen for 10 or so high-grade primordial stones. But at this critical moment, young Master Duanmu started to bid again. Moreover, he increased the price by 5 high-grade primordial stones twice, and still raised the price of this cloud crane to the height of 25 high-grade primordial stones. "Chimpage." Xiao Hua sneered, and said in a low voice, "This is young Master Duanmu telling me that this is the last time he will be lenient. From now on, the bridge will be the bridge, and the road will be the road. He won't let go again." The conflict from before. Hehe, I'm afraid it can't be revealed. Did I ruin fellow Daoist's matter? Fu Jiwen hurriedly said. He really didn't think that much. How about I give it to young Master Duanmu? How is that possible? Doing this is adding fuel to the fire. Xiao Hua shook his head. Don't be afraid of him, this has nothing to do with you. 26 high-grade primordial stones. I want to see, what will young Master Duanmu look like after he loses his mask? After Xiao Hua spoke, the entire auction house was silent. No one bid anymore, and the green crane egg flew to the window. Fu Jiwen took the green crane egg and carefully put it into the small Chenkuan bag. Looking at Fu Jiwen's relieved expression, Xiao Hua suddenly asked curiously, Young Master Fu, this small Chenkuan bag can store living things? Of course. Fu Jiwen didn't find Xiao Hua's ignorance strange at all, and said with a smile, Chenkuan means to form a universe of its own, of course it can store living thing. But no matter if it's the small Chenkuan bag, or even the Chenkuan bangles, they can't store living things for long periods of time. After a certain period of time, the living things have to come out for air. In the following few bids, other than the remaining beast eggs, there were even a dozen young beasts. Although Xiao Hua hadn't seen these young beasts before, he wasn't interested in them. He had a lot of strange things in his space, and every one of them was more powerful than these young beasts. He wouldn't spend primordial stones for no reason. After the time it took to eat a meal, Yu Linfeng finally finished processing the young beasts. Then, he looked at the last golden ball of light on the outline of the 1,000 demons' sacred realm, took a deep breath, and said loudly, Fellow immortals, you should all know that every time my Bright Moon Palace bids for rare items, we leave the 3 most valuable items behind. The next item to bid is one of them. Swoosh. Once Yu Linfeng said this, everyone held their breaths and looked at the golden ball of light with rapt attention. They didn't even want to breathe loudly, and quietly listened to Yu Linfeng's analysis. They really wanted to know what it was. This item. Yu Linfeng didn't even take the item and said, this item is only for the VIPs on the 3rd floor. As for the other immortals, I'm sorry, you don't have the qualifications to bid. Fellow immortal Yu. Just as Yu Linfeng finished speaking, someone naturally wasn't convinced. He jumped up and said, I know the rules of Star Picking Tower very well. When the price of a rare item is set, only the VIPs on the 3rd floor are qualified to bid. But this item hasn't even revealed its base price yet, so we're not allowed to bid. Could it be, this item's base price has already exceeded? At this point, the cultivator seemed to have understood something and couldn't close his mouth. This was the first time he heard that the Bright Moon Palace bid for an item with a base price of more than 10 top-grade source stones. Ari, it's not just the base price. Yu Linfeng waved his hand and sighed, even if you have enough source stones to bid, you still have to consider whether you have the strength to protect this item, whether you have the life to protect this item. Sigh. Many people sucked in a breath of cold air. With a wave of Yu Linfeng's hand, the golden light slowly flew closer. The golden light was blazing. Although it hadn't revealed its true appearance, the indescribable heat was like the scorching sun, and it already made everyone in the Bright Moon Palace feel anxious and thirsty. A feeling of difficulty arose in everyone's hearts. Unconsciously, everyone slightly narrowed their eyes, but the desire in their eyes was even more intense than the scorching sun. They stared fixedly at the light, wanting to know just how rare this item was. When the light landed in front of Yu Linfeng, it was actually dozens of feet wide. It was clear that Yu Linfeng didn't dare to approach the light and had already flown to the top of the Bright Moon Palace. At the same time, wisps of blue mist emerged from all over the Bright Moon Palace like clouds, enveloping everyone in front of it and blocking the heat. Rise. Yu Linfeng clapped his hands and a rare imperial artifact that looked like an ink brush came out of his sleeves. He let out a roar like spring thunder and reached out his hand. The brush was about to throw towards the golden light. Wait. Just at this moment, an extremely loud and clear voice that was even more shocking than muffled thunder came from the windowsill on Xiao Hua's left. Sigh. Even someone as strong as Xiao Hua's mind was shaken by this voice. Xiao Hua couldn't help sucking in a breath of cold air, and looked to his left in disbelief. This window, it seems like there hasn't been a bid. There hasn't even been a sound, right? It seems like their goal is this golden item. When Yu Linfeng heard this voice, his body naturally trembled, and the ink brush remained in his hand. However, Yu Linfeng's face didn't reveal the slightest bit of displeasure. He cupped his hands and said, "Senior upstairs, may I say something? There's no need to open this item." That voice was very imposing, and in people's ears, it seemed to resonate in their hearts. There was an inconceivable power that made people submit from the bottom of their hearts. Yes, this little one understands. Yu Linfeng actually agreed, and withdrew his hand, putting the ink brush back into his sleeve. Cough cough. A clear coughing sound appeared at this time, and a ball of green light floated from the night sky of the Bright Moon Palace. Within the light, Zhu Qing had already changed into green clothes, and slowly flew down like a student rushing to take the exam. When Yu Linfeng saw Zhu Qing, he immediately sweated profusely. His usually calm expression was replaced with panic, and he hastily bowed and said, "Tower Lord, this subordinate, Yen, you can go down." Zhu Qing didn't talk to Yu Linfeng as warmly as she talked to Xiao Hua. Just a few words made Yu Linfeng feel a chill in his heart. He didn't dare to ask anything, and hastily floated down from the sky. However, he still didn't dare to approach the golden light, and followed the edge of the Bright Moon Palace to stand in the shadows. -11. Chapter 3289. Phew. Everyone let out a long breath. The feeling of being suppressed by the dragon's might was really terrible. It was like the struggle of a drowning person before death. That kind of suffocation, that kind of helplessness, that kind of insignificance, was something that these people would probably never forget in their entire lives. "Hehe, this is good. What do you think?" Another arrogant voice shouted, "Do you think you can profane the dragon's remains? You can't even resist this dragon aura, yet you still dare to make a big fuss about it. Do you think the likes of you have the right to see it? Go!" Zhu Qing's face regained some color. She waved her hand and the ink brush landed in her hand. Then she pushed her hand and the dragon bone flew far away. It turned into a golden moon and hung in the night sky of the Bright Moon Palace. "Seniors." Zhu Qing bowed again, speaking softly, "My star-picking tower has some unspeakable difficulties in bidding for this item in Bright Moon Palace. This matter was done in haste. You can see that I didn't even prepare an imperial item to block the dragon aura. You can see. I was caught unprepared. Of course, there are some things that senior blames me too early. I, Zhai Xinglu, know very well what this dragon bone is. In front of the thousands of fellow immortals from the Bright Moon Palace, I can swear that I, Zhai Xinglu, have already sent people to contact Senior. It was only after we did not receive any news from Senior that we decided to bid for this dragon bone when the Bronze Pillar country was at war with other countries. As for how Senior got the news and rushed here, I don't know the reason. I wanted to explain it to Senior face to face, but Senior seems to have misunderstood. I can only explain it here. That faint voice spoke, unknown if it meant it heard or understood. In short, when Zhu Qing heard this voice, he became spirited again and said, "However, since the bidding has already begun, I would like to invite the seniors to make their own bids. This dragon bone. Especially because of the dragon horn, this item is already priceless. I do not dare to profane the dragon bone, so I would like to invite the seniors to make their own bid." Zhu Qing's words were very clear, and Xiao Hua also understood. Not only did this dragon bone have some problems with its origin, but the bidding process was also very complicated. Zhai Xinglu had already known the importance of the dragon bone before the auction. He would definitely have contacted the East Sea Dragon Palace. Unfortunately, for some reason, there was no reply. Furthermore, the Bronze Pillar country was at war. Zhai Xinglu was afraid that there would be problems with the dragon bone. He was anxious to get rid of this hot potato, so he hurriedly sent the dragon bone to the auction. But what was surprising was that before the auction, someone from the East Sea Dragon Palace actually came. What's more, the person who came was very aggressive. They did not receive the message from Zhai Xinglu, but got the message from someone else. They were here to denounce Zhu Qing, so they did not listen to her explanation at all. As for Zhu Qing, it was even more difficult for her to dismount. After all, ordinary cultivators wouldn't know what items would be auctioned in this auction, but people like young Master Duanmu would definitely know. Perhaps, the item that young Master Duanmu had mentioned earlier might really be this. For this, he was willing to sacrifice 3 supreme-grade primal stones. Under such circumstances, it was impossible for Zhu Qing to give the dragon bone to someone from the East Sea Dragon Palace for free. The only way was to bid. Poor child Tilda Xiaohua looked at Zhu Qing sympathetically and thought, "It seems that everything is not easy. I'll bid." Although no name was mentioned, everyone already knew that the person who bid first was from the East Sea Dragon Palace. At this time, someone in the room said, "No matter how many primal stones others bid, my East will have 1 supreme-grade primal stone more than them." Hee. Before the person from the East Sea Dragon Palace finished speaking, the voice that was a little leaky laughed shrilly and said, "I know that your East Sea Dragon Palace has countless treasures, but it's not only your East Sea Dragon Palace that has treasures in this world. I have 10 supreme-grade primal stones more than the East Sea Dragon Palace. Then, all the other forces entered the auction and started bidding. On the balcony, Xiaohua squinted his eyes and looked at the golden moon. He secretly pondered whether or not he should bid. Just now, the dragon might above the dragon horn was really terrifying. If it could be used on a magic weapon, it would absolutely be a sharp weapon to kill people. Oh, I forgot about it. Xiaohua suddenly patted his forehead and woke up. Damn it, it doesn't matter if I want it or not. Isn't Little White lacking this thing? If Little White needs it, I'll buy it regardless of the East Sea Dragon Palace. Thinking, Xiaohua's mind immediately turned into a jade archive. Xiaohua appeared in front of the mysterious dark cloud. Hey! This mysterious dark cloud seems to have some changes. Because he had learned from the bone that ordinary people couldn't see souls, Xiaohua paid special attention to this mysterious dark cloud. However, when he saw the heavenly marks and earth deeds on it, Xiaohua couldn't help but stare blankly. Previously, although there were heavenly marks and earth deeds outside the mysterious dark cloud, these mysterious natural objects were faintly discernible, and simply couldn't be seen clearly. But now, these heavenly might could be clearly seen, as if they were carved outside the mysterious dark cloud. Moreover, there were strands of green shadows entangling the heavenly might. Those heavenly marks and earth deeds were already like a tight armor wrapping around the mysterious dark clouds, and these green shadows gave off a green glow outside the armor, adding another layer of protection. Moreover, within the heavenly marks and earth deeds, there were some faint lightning and broken threads. Even Xiaohua, who was in the Jade Archive, felt a burst of dizziness when he looked at these broken threads. Suddenly, a scene of 5 thunderbolts roaring appeared in front of his eyes. I'm afraid that the 9th heaven of spirit origin has made new progress. Xiaohua was overjoyed. His figure hid in the dark cloud. The moment Xiaohua's figure disappeared into the dark cloud, millions of lightning and broken threads were born from the dark cloud. However, as soon as Xiaohua touched Xiaohua's figure, his figure disappeared without a trace. Haha, Xiaohua, you're here? When Jade Archive Xiaohua's figure appeared in the sky, the little white dragon immediately sensed it. The huge dragon head poked out from the top of the sky and called out with a smile. Xiaohua glanced at Xiaohua. At this time, the sky was incomparably spacious. Many green seal characters fluttered in the sky as if they were alive. Xiaohua's incomparably huge dragon body was already entrenched at the junction between the sky and the sky, covering the entire horizon. Those countless dark green soul strands were like seaweed in the sea, entwining the dragon body. When the soul strands danced, the dragon body also danced. Countless dark green splendors were like fireflies that filled the sky. The soul cultivator Xiaohua also transformed into 100 jong tall giant. His whole body was not surrounded by the soul strands. His body was everywhere. I'm here, Xiaohua said indifferently. He looked at the soul cultivator Xiaohua, who ignored him and saluted. Fellow Daoist, you've worked hard. Buzz buzz. Countless green seal characters rushed out from the sea of soul strands. The soul cultivator Xiao Hua's figure slowly shrank, turning into the same appearance as Xiao Hua. He also cupped his hands and said, "Fellow Daoist, I have a bone here and a soul treasure called the Soul Bridge. I don't know if I can give it to fellow Daoist to cultivate." Xiao Hua asked with a smile. Xiao Hua didn't smile. He only said indifferently, "Fellow Daoist, please give it to me. Comprehending the bone and refining the soul treasure is my duty. Previously, my cultivation was insufficient and I couldn't control the ninth heaven of spirit origin. Now, with Xiao Bai's help, I can barely do it." "Good." Xiao Hua laughed. The bone and soul treasure were comprehended by him, and even the soul treasure was refined by him. Now that he had the help of Xiao Hua, wouldn't he be able to save himself some trouble? "Fellow Daoist, please take a look." With a wave of his hand, the Jade Archive Xiao Hua pulled the bone out of space and handed it to the soul cultivator Xiao Hua. The soul cultivator Xiao Hua didn't even bother to look at it. Instead, he opened his mouth, and several soul strands shot out like tentacles and swallowed the bone. Xiao Hua looked at this action with a dumbfounded expression. He smiled bitterly and said, "Fellow Daoist, we are of the same origin. Can you be a bit more refined? Otherwise, don't say you know I in front of Xiao Bai." Xiao Hua responded indifferently. Obviously, he didn't take this to heart. Xiao Hua waved his hand again and said, "This is another bone. There is a green seal character recorded in it. I haven't comprehended it yet, so I'll give it to you." Xiao Hua opened his mouth again. Xiao Hua hurriedly withdrew his hand, and the bone disappeared into thin air. "Give it to me." Xiao Hua stretched out his hand and asked Xiao Hua for it. "Pay attention to your manners." Xiao Hua put the bone in Xiao Hua's hand. The soul cultivator, Xiao Hua, took the bone and slowly placed it in front of his forehead, pressing it against his forehead. "Good, that's how it should be." Jade Archive Xiao Hua praised with satisfaction. Unfortunately, before he could finish speaking, Xiao Hua slapped his hand down, causing a ripple to appear on his forehead. Then, his knuckles sank back in. Xiao Hua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He could only say helplessly, "Fortunately, this can be considered as some progress. What about the soul treasure? Let me see it." Xiao Hua asked again. It seemed that he was very bored in the 9 heavens of spirit origin, and these bones and soul treasures were good things for him to pass the time. "Fellow Daoist, are you sure there is no problem?" Xiao Hua still didn't dare to send the soul bridge that hadn't been refined into the mysterious dark clouds, and asked tentatively. Xiao Hua said indifferently, "Fellow Daoist, if you want to take it, then take it. If you don't want to take it, then slowly refine it." "Okay." Xiao Hua waved his hand, wanting to drag the bone ball to the endless sky. Unfortunately, beyond his expectations, he didn't see the bone ball appear even after waving his hand a few times. How strange. Jade Archive Xiao Hua looked outside the dark clouds thoughtfully and said with a faint smile, "Let's go take a look." Xiao Hua turned into a green light and rushed out of the endless sky. Xiao Hua naturally followed him out of the mysterious dark clouds. Outside the dark clouds, the bone ball was stuck to the surface of the mysterious dark clouds and rotating at an extremely fast speed. The bone particles had long disappeared, leaving only layers of white flashing light. As for the mysterious dark clouds, where the bone ball touched, the heaven pattern earth deed was emitting a faint green light, blocking the bone ball. Moreover, where the bone ball touched, the thousands of lightning threads and broken fireflies also gathered to block the bone ball. -11. Chapter 3290. This thing is a genuine soul item. According to the bone, it can change the shape of the soul bridge according to the soul of different people. It matches the heavenly pattern and earth deed of the soul. Only then can it enter the soul of another person. Soul cultivator Xiao Hua said indifferently after taking a glance at it. "It seems. I can only refine it myself." Jade Archive Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. "Really? You're underestimating me too much." Soul cultivator Xiao Hua waved his hand and the bone ball fell into his hand. Then, he opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of green gas that covered the bone ball. The bone ball flew into the air and entered Xiao Hua's mouth along with the green gas. Then, soul cultivator Xiao Hua rushed into the mysterious cloud, but the heavenly pattern and earth deed didn't react at all. Good Jade Archive Xiao Hua clapped his hands. That's the way to do it. That's the style of an expert. Jade Archive Xiao Hua once again flew into the mysterious dark clouds. At this time, soul cultivator Xiao Hua had already hidden himself within the soul strands. He knew that Jade Archive Xiao Hua would no longer look for him. He didn't know if Jade Archive Xiao Hua was cultivating the Nine Heavens spirit origin or refining his soul bridge. Fellow Daoist, my cultivation has yet to recover. Looking at the situation outside, I'm afraid I'll have to compete with others. Only then can I have a good ending. I wonder if fellow Daoist can lend me a hand? Jade Archive Xiao Hua raised his head and laughed. You want me to go out? Soul cultivator Xiao Hua didn't show himself. Instead, he spoke with a thunderous voice and thousands of green seal characters overflowed in the sky. Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking. Jade Archive Xiao Hua frowned and had a bad feeling in his heart. Do you think I can go out? Soul cultivator Xiao Hua said indifferently, I'm just a strand of your soul. Without another body, I'll turn into dust as soon as I go out. But Jade Archive Xiao Hua thought of the soul inside the flying sword and was about to ask. Soul cultivator Xiao Hua naturally knew what he was thinking and immediately said, the soul on the flying sword is the carrier of the flying sword. Naturally, it can go out alone. Or perhaps, when your physical body perishes, our primordial spirits will be able to leave. As for now, it's absolutely impossible. External incarnation technique. Jade Archive Xiao Hua suddenly thought of the body extension technique mentioned by the 10,000 Demon Realm Empress. That's right. Once you have successfully cultivated an avatar, perhaps all of us will be able to lend you a hand. Soul cultivator Xiao Hua replied, actually, you should know all of this, but you. Forget it, let's not talk about it. Having too many primordial divinities isn't necessarily a good thing for you. As soul cultivator Xiao Hua's voice disappeared, Jade Archive Xiao Hua's face turned awkward. Yes, as long as the soul cultivator Xiao Hua knew, the Jade Archive Xiao Hua should also know. But there was only one Jade Archive Xiao Hua. What green-robed Xiao Hua? What soul cultivator Xiao Hua? What karmic Xiao Hua? There were simply too many. There was no way he could learn all of these primordial divinities at once. He could only slowly assimilate and digest them. Forget it. Jade Archive Xiao Hua sighed as he thought of the important matter. He hurriedly called Little White over and told it about the dragon bones in the auction house. Then, he asked, Little White, your soul is already full. Aren't you just waiting for this body? Hihi, many thanks, Xiao Hua. Whitey laughed loudly, its dragon roar echoing through the entire sky. What I want is a complete body. Not only do I want the dragon bones, but I also want the blood essence. These incomplete dragon bones. According to what you said, only the dragon horns are of some use. I can't use them. Jade Archive Xiao Hua nodded and said, how do you say? I can only rely on my luck in the future. Let's leave it to fate. Anyway, I'm not in a hurry to go out. Little White didn't seem to mind, and then said somewhat apologetically, it's a pity that my memories are now very fragmented. I don't know what many of them are, so I can't give you any pointers in your cultivation. I'm really sorry. Hehe, this is nothing. Jade Archive Xiao Hua laughed, you and I share weal and woe together. There's no need to mention these empty courtesies. Little White's huge dragon head nodded up and down, and then said with some hesitation, with your cultivation level, I can just touch the layer of seal in your soul, but this seal is a bit strange. As for how strange it is, I'll have to enter it first. Hearing this, Jade Archive Xiao Hua's heart settled, and said, oh right, Little White, can you see my nine heaven spirit? See? Little White didn't seem to understand. After thinking for a moment, it asked, are you talking about the surroundings? Yes. Jade Archive Xiao Hua's heart jumped, and nodded. I can. So many soul strands, so many green lines, how can I not see it? Little White answered straightforwardly. Jade Archive Xiao Hua shook his head slightly. What I mean is, when you enter here, can you see the shape of this place? I understand. You're talking about the appearance of this soul. Little White suddenly realized. That's right. Of course I can't see it. Little White laughed. Otherwise, why would I struggle with all my might when you dragged me in? Ah! You can't see it. Jade Archive Xiao Hua was a little surprised. But why can I see your appearance? You can even cultivate layer by layer. Xiao Hua, you have to understand. Being able to see and being able to sense are two different things. Little White explained. Moreover, the soul is fused with the body, and is protected by the body. Others can't see it. A soul that has left the body can be called a soul, and is no longer a soul. Perhaps it can be seen by others. Of course, even if it is the soul of the body, if there is a powerful secret technique that can surpass the protection of the body to the soul, perhaps it can be seen. Speaking to here, Little White apologized again. These are just some of my incomplete memories. I don't know if they are correct. It can be considered as a reference. That is to say, if there is a soul sword piercing from the outside. Jade Archive Xiao Hua had a trace of understanding. This is just based on feeling. In fact, no matter what, their soul sword can't see the appearance of the soul. Yes, that should be the case. Little White nodded. The soul is the most mysterious place in the body. How can it be exposed there? Then, you may not be able to see the layer of seal in my soul. And just by sensing it. The seal may be visible, but what is under the seal, I can only sense it, but not see it. Little White laughed. Jade Archive Xiao Hua frowned and said, then you can slowly break the seal. I'll have to trouble you. You're welcome. Little White knew that Jade Archive Xiao Hua was about to leave, and the huge dragon head retracted into the sea of soul strands. Jade Archive Xiao Hua looked around. The sky was full of flickering lights, and sighed, alas, if this is a soul cultivator. It's really strange. But what's even stranger is this Xiao's Dharma eye. After speaking, Jade Archive Xiao Hua retreated from the mysterious dark clouds. However, when his primordial spirit returned, he was shocked again when he looked at the auction field. He saw that the auction field, which was very lively just a moment ago, was now completely silent. Even Zhu Qing was silently standing in the air with her lips tightly shut. Although there was a trace of a smile on her face, there was a trace of strangeness in her eyes. Strange. Xiao Hua was puzzled. It was only a moment. What happened? However, the bright moon, which was as bright as the sun, was still hanging there. Obviously, the bidding for the dragon bones was not over yet. Xiao Hua raised his eyebrows and was about to ask Fujiwen when he suddenly saw Zhu Qing's somewhat helpless expression. He came to a realization. Damn it, this is the voice transmission of the people from the Dragon Palace, young Master Duanmu, and a few cultivators who have the strength to bid for the dragon bone. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua laughed in his heart. In this world, there is nothing that can't be compromise. As long as there are enough benefits, everything can be exchanged. A set of dragon bones can be measured with top-grade primordial stones, and a promise can also be measured with top-grade primordial stone. These people, just now, were all very aggressive. One wanted to add 1 top-grade primordial stone more than the others, and another wanted to add 10 top-grade primordial stones more than everyone else, as if the dragon bones were something that must be obtained. But in fact, only the East Sea Dragon Palace had the intention to obtain it. The others were just looting a burning house, wanting to gain benefits from it. It seems that I should have bid just now. Maybe I can even get a high-level water escape technique. Strange. Just when Xiao Hua was thinking whether it was too late to bid now, Fujiwen whispered, "This has been discussed for a long time. Why hasn't the result come out yet? Could it be that, besides the East Sea Dragon Palace, there is someone who urgently needs this thing?" Ha ha ha. For a moment, Xiao Hua was dumbfounded. Xiao Hua was definitely not the only smart person in this world. Although Fujiwen's cultivation was ordinary, he obviously understood the strangeness of it. What does young Master Fu think? Besides the East Sea Dragon Palace, Who else needs this dragon bone? Xiao Hua naturally did not know, so he could only ask in order to advance and retreat. Fu Jiwen looked out of the window at the slightly strange third floor and whispered, "This dragon bone may be an excellent material for refining weapons in the eyes of Taoist cultivators. In the eyes of Buddhists, it is also a material for refining Buddhist weapons. In the eyes of the East Sea Dragon Palace, it is the remains of a senior to be revered and collected. But in the eyes of Confucian cultivators, the most important thing is the fate of the royal family." What? The fate of the royal family? This dragon bone has something to do with fate. That's right. Fu Jiwen nodded. The fate of the royal family is related to the amount of imperial qi of the royal family descendant. And the dragon aura on the dragon bone, especially the dragon horn, can be transformed into imperial qi with the help of Confucian cultivators' secret technique. Xiao Hua understood and glanced at the third floor's window sill. There must be a royal family of the Bronze Pillar country on the third floor. Also, Zhai Xinglu is eagerly bidding for this dragon bone, probably because they are afraid of attracting the attention of the royal families of various country, especially the royal family of the Bronze Pillar country. There is definitely no royal family of the Bronze Pillar country here, Fu Jiwen said decisively. There can only be the royal family of another country. And the king of the Bronze Pillar country is definitely not in the country. The regent should be the crown prince, and the relationship between the crown prince and Zhai Xinglu is ordinary. -11. Chapter 3291. Yes, yes, yes. When Xiao Hua heard that Fu Jiwen was able to read so much information from it, he couldn't help but feel surprised. However, after thinking about it for a moment, he couldn't help but be convinced. He nodded and said, if the king of the Copper Pillar country was here, this dragon bone would definitely be left in the royal family of the Copper Pillar country. But since the dragon bone is being auctioned here, your king must not know. Since he doesn't know, Zhai Xinglu won't inform the other royal family members. Otherwise, Zhai Xinglu won't exist in Bronze Pillar country. Those who can come can only be the royal family of other countries. But the problem is, since the East Sea Dragon Palace is here, which royal family is not afraid of the East Sea Dragon Palace and dares to compete with them? Hearing this, Xiao Hua finally understood Fu Jiwen's real doubts. Xiao Hua shrugged and said with a smile, the hidden immortal continent is so big, who knows? Xiao Hua stopped talking. Nonsense, Zhai Xinglu organized the bidding for the dragon bone in such a hurry. How could they invite all the royal families of the hidden immortal continent? It must be the royal family of Yuzhou or the vicinity of Yuzhou. Although there were many royal families, Fu Jiwen must know these royal families like the back of his hand with the practice of reading 10,000 books and traveling 1,000 miles. Even he found it strange. There must be a secret behind this matter. There were many secrets in this world, and the answers to these secrets were definitely known by someone. However, as for who that person was, that was another mystery. However, the secret of this matter is obviously not something the cultivators of Bright Moon Palace can know. Just as Fu Jiwen was racking his brains to calculate, the voice of the East Sea Dragon Palace sounded again, "Young Master Zhu, this old man wants to buy this item." Then, the voice disappeared again. But seeing Zhu Qing's expression lighten, he shouted again, "Okay, we'll do as Senior says. This item belongs to Senior." Saying this, Zhu Qing waved his hand, and the ink brush flew out from his sleeve and rushed to the balcony on the third floor. "Hehe, how can this old man use Zhai Xinglu's item?" A strange sound was heard again. Woo! A gust of wind suddenly came from a balcony on the third floor. Immediately, the golden full moon was elongated. The dragon might that appeared earlier rushed everywhere again. However, this time, it seemed to be a demonstration of the East Sea Dragon Palace. The dragon might disappeared as soon as it appeared. Then, the golden brilliance fell somewhere on the third floor. Inside the Bright Moon Palace, the golden light disappeared, and the ink brush fell from the sky. Zhu Qing flew over and caught the ink brush, but didn't fly back. Instead, she stood there silently. When Yu Linfeng saw this, he hastily flew out from his hiding place. At this moment, He had already regained his smile and naturally cupped his hands towards the surrounding people. Fellow immortals, I've made you wait for a long time. I'm back. There aren't many opportunities left for us to bid. If any fellow immortals are still hesitating, don't say I didn't warn you. If you miss this village, there won't be another shop like this one. If you want to find another good treasure like tonight's auction, I'm afraid it won't be too possible. This guy really knows how to talk. Xiao Hua smiled. Yu Linfeng's words covered everyone's awkwardness and his own mistake. He even teased them a few times, which eased the atmosphere by quite a bit. Suddenly, Yu Linfeng slapped his forehead again, as if he had just woken up. He shouted, Ayo, I'm afraid I was wrong. Everyone has been waiting for this moment, right? Waiting to bid. Flying Imperial equipment, right? As he spoke, Yu Linfeng tapped the folding fan in his hand. A small boat flew over from the distant light spot. The boat's bow trembled as if it was riding the waves. This is an ink boat personally made by a disciple of Hidden Immortal Continent School of Moism. It has the School of Moism's unique symbol. It's the real deal. Yu Linfeng seemed to have grasped the rhythm of the auction. He regained his confidence and introduced it with a smile. School of Moism? Xiao Hua heard this from upstairs and asked Fu Jiwen, School of Moism should also be one of the schools of the 100 schools of thought, right? Indeed. Fu Jiwen nodded and said, this school of Moism is very powerful. It's second only to Confucianism. Previously, there was a saying that anyone who wasn't a Confucian was a school of Moism. The founder of School of Moism was Mo Di. Later on, he was revered as Z, or Mozi. This school of thought uses love with impartiality, mutual benefit as its basis. Impartiality means to see others as oneself. Love with impartiality means to love others as oneself. Love with impartiality can achieve the goal of mutual benefit. Politically, they advocate for virtuousness, unity, and non-aggression. Economically, they advocate for a strong economy and frugality. Ideologically, they advocate for respecting the heavens and ghosts. At the same time, they also advocate for non-life, emphasizing on relying on one's own strength. Love with impartiality, non-aggression, virtuousness, unity, frugality, non-happiness, heavenly will, understanding ghosts, and non-life. This is what all disciples of School of Moism must practice. If it's only like this, then this School of Moism can't be considered powerful. Fu Jiwen said again, School of Moism is unique in 2 points. First, School of Moism has a strict organization. Most of its members come from the lower strata of society. According to legend, all of them are willing to go through fire and tread on knives to inspire themselves. Their disciples who engage in debating are called Mobian, those who engage in martial arts are called Morxia, their leaders are called Ju, Zi. Their discipline is strict and clear. According to legend, School of Moism, those who kill will die, those who injure will be punished. Oh, isn't that a ranger? Hearing this, Xiao Hua came to a realization. He originally thought that a ranger was something from Confucianism. He didn't expect that it was actually from School of Moism. Yes, a ranger is from School of Moism. Fu Jiwen nodded. However, that's an ancient matter. In today's 100 schools of Confucianism, which youth doesn't want to be a free and unfettered ranger? Which school doesn't have a few rangers whose names will be remembered for hundreds of generations? Then what's the second powerful point? Xiao Hua seemed to have thought of something. Is it this flying device? Correct. What fellow Daoist Xiao thinks is correct. Fu Jiwen said with a smile. According to legend, Senior Moism is an expert in craftsmanship. His wisdom and dexterity far surpass the other schools of Confucianism. He can be said to be knowledgeable and multi-talented. It is said that he can instantly cut a 3-inch piece of wood into an ingenious object that can carry more than 600 kilograms. This ingenious object doesn't rely on noble spirit. According to Han Fizi Y Chuo Shuozwa, Moism is a wood kite. It took him 3 years to succeed and 1 day to fail. Even in ancient times, in order to teach the people, Moism even used leverage to develop oranges to carry water. He also made pulleys, ladders, and so on for production and military purposes. He was also an expert in city defense techniques, the so-called Moism. His disciples summarized his experience into the 21 chapters of city defense. These mechanical techniques of his are the embryonic form of our current Confucianism's imperial equipment. It can be said that Confucianism's imperial equipment came from school of Moism. Unfortunately, Moism's views are tit for tat with Confucianism. He opposes the system of feudal officials and advocates valuing the virtuous. When appointing officials, one must pay attention to talent. He breaks the old concept of hierarchy and makes officials impermanent and the people impermanent. Therefore, in ancient times, Confucianism and school of Moism fought very fiercely. School of Moism was suppressed by Confucianism to the point of choking. Looks like this esoteric debate is also a matter of luck. School of Moism's luck is far inferior to Confucianism's. Xiao Hua says with a smile. This Xiao does not understand the essence of school of Moism, but it sounds somewhat similar to my Daoist refiners. Indeed. Fu Jiwen nods and says, most of the Confucianism's refiners are basically school of Moism's disciples, although they don't admit it. Moreover, speaking to here, Fu Jiwen pauses for a bit. He glances at Xiao Hua and says, previously I told fellow Daoist about the mysterious demon god chess, right? On the hidden immortal continent, there is a rather strange saying. That is, the demon god chess was originally owned by school of Moism. Senior Moism obtained a lot of enlightenment from the demon god chess. The mechanism technique and the refining technique also originated from the demon god chess. Hiss. Hearing this, Xiao Hua sucked in a breath of cold air. Previously, Fu Jiwen's understanding of the godly devil chess, the most mysterious of the 10 great imperial artifacts, could be considered vague. But now, Fu Jiwen's last sentence made Xiao Hua feel somewhat enlightened. The godly devil chess, the 6 great generals, the 6 great demon realms, weren't they puppets? It's just that this kind of puppet is really high level and can resist a real cultivator. That's right, young Master Fu, Confucianism also has puppets, right? Puppets. Fu Jiwen stares blankly for a moment. Soon after, he somewhat understands and says with a smile, fellow Daoist Xiao should be talking about puppet. Puppets. Xiao Hua has never heard of this name. He tries to probe, is it to take some materials and refine them, and then listen to the orders of the refiner like a human? Yes, it's puppets. Fu Jiwen nods and says, fellow Daoist Xiao is right. School of Moism indeed has this method to make puppets. This is not rare in the hidden immortal continent. Oh, if you didn't mention it, I wouldn't have noticed. Puppets didn't appear in today's auction. Then that's it. Xiao Hua nods, that demon god chess should be the puppets that School of Moism is talking about. I'm afraid it's not that simple. Fu Jiwen shakes his head. There are many people in the hidden immortal continent who are as knowledgeable as fellow Daoist Xiao. They didn't say anything, I'm afraid. Fu Jiwen doesn't finish, but obviously, Bing doesn't agree with what Xiao Hua says. Forget it, let's not talk about this. Xiao Hua laughs. School of Moism is an aristocratic family of mechanics. They are also the best at imperial artifacts. Their strength cannot be underestimated. They are the strongest opponent of Confucianism. This. Fu Jiwen mutters, how can the demon god chess be puppets? Who can control such a powerful puppet? Furthermore, the biggest opponent of Confucianism is no longer School of Moism. Xiao Hua naturally doesn't have any evidence to say that the demon god chess is a puppet. Everything is just a guess. But Fu Jiwen mutters in the end, he laughs again, this Xiao naturally knows. Currently, Confucianism's opponent is Buddhist sect. Although it's a tripartite balance of power, it seems that Thousand Demons' sacred realm isn't too interested in Pure Land and hidden immortal continent. This. Fu Jiwen sees that School of Moism's ink boat has already been sold out. He subconsciously reminds, fellow Daoist Xiao, if you want to freely gallop in the hidden immortal continent, having a good spirit beast or flying imperial artifact is the best choice. Fellow Daoist Xiao didn't bid for the previous spirit beast, it's better to bid for an imperial artifact. -11. Chapter 3292. It doesn't matter. Xiao Hua waves his hand. He has the refining method of Imperial Thunder Sect's Thunderboat in his space, as well as enough materials. If given time, refining a real Thunderboat is not a problem. Who cares about some ink boat? Tell me, why is Moism not the opponent of Confucianism? Then Buddhism and demons are also not the biggest threat to Confucianism? Alas, fellow Xiao, haven't you heard that those who are defeated internally must be defeated externally? Or should I say, to resist external aggression, one must first pacify internal affairs. Fu Jiwen sighs and says, nowadays, the biggest problem of Confucianism is not Buddhism, but themselves. Oh, what do you mean? Xiao Hua is surprised. Isn't this hidden immortal continent the world of Confucianism? Fellow Xiao, you know the words political and martial arts, right? Of course, who doesn't know those who have read books? Xiao Hua is somewhat baffled. Political and martial arts are naturally used to govern the world. Fu Jiwen says in a low voice, but what about martial arts? That is to use martial arts to expand the territory. Isn't this normal? Xiao Hua scratches his head. What's so strange about it? If it's just one school's opinion, it naturally doesn't matter, but if it's two schools' debate, one specialized in martial arts and the other in political, then, wouldn't it be contradictory? Fu Jiwen's voice is even lower. Xiao Hua is speechless, looking at the flying equipment that is still bidding. He doesn't know whether to laugh or cry. What young master said is too vague, I can't understand it. In ancient times, the one who opposed Confucianism was Moism. Now, Moism's disciples are reduced to great masters. They don't pose a threat to Confucianism, but Confucianism's disciples are proficient in the 6 arts, but after all, they are scholars. They are often ridiculed for not having the strength to truss a chicken. Now, the one who opposes Confucianism is militarism. Fu Jiwen finally says hidden immortal continent's biggest worry. Militarism? Xiao Hua is speechless. He naturally doesn't know what militarism is. Fu Jiwen is already used to Xiao Hua's ignorance. He patiently explains, the ancestor of militarism is the outstanding military expert Sun Wu. This senior is also respected as a son, his grandson. His work is the famous military book, Sun's Art of War. It was a military masterpiece, the earliest military book on the hidden immortal continent. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated, and other military sayings came from this book. Even now, it enjoyed a great reputation on the hidden immortal continent. Many academies listed it as a must-study book. The militarists are opposed to empty talk of benevolence and righteousness. They advocate victory and strength, so the world is convinced. Of course, this is only their school's opinion. The most terrifying thing is their martial arts. Fu Jiwen continued, the art of war may be a contest between countries, but martial arts is a direct attack on the Confucians' refined politeness, ruling the world with etiquette, and winning people with virtue. Use virtue to win people over, use virtue to win people over, haha. This Xiao rubbed his nose, his heart filled with sorrow. If literary governance is the ideology of Confucianism, then martial arts is the ideology of the school of military strategy. Fu Jiwen smiled bitterly. The Confucian school uses words to contain the noble spirit and uses it to defeat the enemy. The militarists, on the other hand, use their fists, kicks, and martial techniques to trigger the noble spirit and use it to win. This Xiao seems to understand a little. Xiao Hua understood martial techniques, so he naturally knew the difference. He nodded. It's a pity that martial techniques have a high requirement for one's aptitude. It's different from the Confucian school. As long as one is not unbearably ignorant, one can study. Therefore, although the militarists are somewhat tyrannical and overbearing, they are still not a match for the Confucian school. Fu Jiwen concluded. The bronze pillar state seems to be the militarists. Xiao Hua suddenly thought of something in his mind. Perhaps it's not that serious. Xiao Hua smiled. Don't the legalists also have flying swords? Don't they also use the noble spirit to activate the flying swords? This is no different from using martial techniques to activate the noble spirit. It should be different. Fujiwen smiled bitterly. Martial artists are people who strive for strength and courage. It's very contrary to the Confucian school's philosophy of using words and not actions. Moreover, the Confucian school emphasizes etiquette to educate the world, while the militarists use force to conquer the world. So, Xiao Hua hit the nail on the head. This is the fundamental difference between the Confucian school and the militarists. It has nothing to do with martial techniques. In fact, this is also the choice of the rulers of the various countries due to their own greed and ambition. It has nothing to do with the Confucian school or the militarist. Fujiwen thought for a moment and nodded slightly. Fellow Daoist Xiao can see clearly. Most of the rulers of countries that promote martial arts and strive to expand their territory are heavily influenced by the militarist. This bronze pillar state seems to be controlled by the militarists. Perhaps. Xiao Hua was not particularly interested in the struggle between the Confucian cultivators and the militarists. As he spoke, he looked at the auction. The hidden immortal continent had a lot of flying imperial tools, and their styles were also strange. In addition to flying boats, there were also carriages, houses, flying birds, and so on. What was special was that there were actually 2 fish-shaped imperial tools, which opened Xiao Hua's eyes. After Yu Linfeng finished bidding for these flying imperial tools one by one, he looked at the 2 balls of light above the hidden immortal continent and above the 1,000 demons' sacred realm. He took a deep breath and said, "Fellow Taoists, the tense moment has finally arrived. There are still 2 things that have not been shown to fellow Taoists in this auction. Aside from the treasure of the 1,000 demons' sacred realm, these are the 2 most precious things. Similarly, these 2 things can only be bid for by the VIPs on the balcony. Fellow Taoists below the balcony, due to the lack of primeval stones that my Zhai Xinglu has, we cannot bid. Please forgive us, fellow Taoists." This time, when everyone heard Yu Linfeng's words, no one dared to be noisy. The last 2 treasures were on par with the dragon bones. They were absolutely priceless treasures. When the dragon bones appeared, everyone had suffered a lot. Now, they naturally knew that this treasure wasn't something they could get their hands on. The only thing they could do was look at it and enjoy it. Fellow Daoist, this auction is really long. Hurry up and explain the treasures that are about to be auctioned. A voice urgently said, although we don't have enough primeval stones to bid, it's good to be able to broaden our horizons. Okay. Yu Linfeng raised his hand and pointed his fan. The light above the hidden immortal continent slowly flew over. However, under everyone's expectant gazes, it only flew halfway before stopping. Yu Linfeng continued, "Fellow Taoists, have you heard of the Scarlet Emperor's war chariot?" Yu Linfeng's words were truly shocking. Everyone was stunned after hearing this. The cultivator who asked the question almost stuttered, Fellow Daoist, are you sure you're not mistaken? This Scarlet Emperor, is it one of the 5 ancient heavenly emperors? The one that killed the 1,000 demon sacred realms Kuan Peng and fought against immortal Emperor Go Chen for 1,000 years? Yu Linfeng, this is the Scarlet Emperor's war chariot that he used to command thousands of generals and defeat immortal Emperor Go Chen? Another person hastily shouted. It seemed that this Scarlet Emperor and Scarlet Emperor's war chariot was something that everyone on the hidden immortal continent knew about. Fellow Taoists. Yu Linfeng hastily smiled and said, "Don't worry, didn't I already say before? Our Zhai Xinglu's auction won't have anything too rare." "You don't mean what you say, fellow Daoist. That dragon bone just now, hey, isn't it rare?" Before Yu Linfeng could finish, someone interrupted him. Yu Linfeng wasn't angry and smiled. "There are exceptions to everything, right? The dragon bone just now was personally bid by my lord, and this item was bid by me. Do you think this is the Scarlet Emperor's war chariot?" Ha ha ha. Someone on the 3rd floor laughed. "If it really is the Scarlet Emperor's war chariot, then I'm afraid we don't have the qualifications to be VIPs here. Fellow Daoist, Hurry up and reveal it. Yes, Senior. Yu Linfeng heard this and hastily bowed. He pointed the fan in his hand and the light that stopped in the air flew over again. As it flew closer, a silhouette of several feet in size appeared. Before anyone could see it clearly, there was a loud bang, and a crimson flame rushed out from the brilliance. A feeling of being burned by fire involuntarily arose in everyone's heart. Moreover, the fiery red light was very glaring. Everyone's eyes were once again blinded by the glare. However, even with their eyes closed, the simple and unadorned yet ferocious battlefield was still reflected in everyone's eyes. Good heavens, this war chariot is really powerful. Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and felt the hot aura of the battlefield. He couldn't help but whisper, the material used to make this war chariot is very special. It can emit fire-type spiritual energy. The cultivator who drives this war chariot can use this war chariot to display power that is even more powerful than a magic treasure. Moreover, this war chariot itself contains a baleful aura, full of blood and resentment. Even if it isn't the real Scarlet Emperor's war chariot, it must have gone through thousands of battles, and tens of thousands of people must have died under this war chariot. If one sits on this war chariot and flies, not to mention its awe-inspiring, even some cowardly cultivators would have to hide far away. If one were to fight with others, it would make them tremble in fear, and they wouldn't be able to display even 70% of their cultivation. Shua. Yu Linfeng, whose face was also illuminated by the scarlet flame, took out a palm-sized jade bottle from his bosom. With a wave of his hand, the jade bottle emitted a misty light. It was like a layer of gauze that completely covered the war chariot, and the scarlet flame was contained within the gauze. Fellow immortals. Yu Linfeng clapped his hands and laughed. This is a replica of the Scarlet Emperor's war chariot. It's called the Scarlet Flame War Chariot. Although this Scarlet Flame War Chariot is a replica of the Scarlet Emperor's war chariot, its size and carvings are exactly the same. What's special is that this Scarlet Flame War Chariot was also owned by a general who commanded tens of thousands of troops. He also relied on this war chariot to achieve great achievements on the battlefield. It's not convenient for me to announce the specific details of this Scarlet Flame War Chariot here. However, what I can reveal to fellow immortals is that this war chariot's entire body is made from a complete piece of fire spirit stone. Sealed within it are the soul essences of 3 fire spirit beasts. Without the strength of 4th grade essence energy, it is impossible to control it. -11. Chapter 3293. Hiss. All the cultivators were shocked. A whole piece of fire spirit stone? How many top-grade primordial stones will it cost? Fire spirit stone is precious, but don't forget the 3 fire spirit beasts inside. Those are fire-bathing spirit beast. They were extinct in ancient times. Xiao Hua didn't care about the material of the Scarlet Flame War Chariot, but after hearing about the fire spirit stone, he hurriedly scanned it with his divine sense and couldn't help but groan, "Oh my god, this is a fire essence flame crystal." Such a big piece of fire essence flame crystal is actually made into a war chariot. And there are 3 spirit beasts' souls inside. If it's a real Scarlet Emperor war chariot, what will it look like? Of course, Xiao Hua also understood that the Scarlet Emperor war chariot must look like this Scarlet Flame War Chariot, but he just couldn't imagine that there was a material more precious than the fire essence flame crystal. This was what they meant by there was no best, only better. Not bad, this war chariot is excellent, I like it very much. Little friend you, how much is this war chariot? A faint voice came from the room of the East Sea Dragon Palace. Senior, the starting price of this war chariot is 50,000 top-grade primordial stones. Yu Linfeng hurriedly said respectfully, every increment is 1,000 top-grade primordial stones. Okay, I bid 50,000 top-grade primordial stones. The person from the East Sea Dragon Palace opened the bidding without hesitation. Your East Sea Dragon Palace is in the East Sea, the water element primordial chi is rich. What use can the Scarlet Flame War Chariot be in the East Sea? A woman's voice said faintly, I bid 60,000 top-grade primordial stones. Sister already has so many ceremonial guards, why do you still need this war chariot? This little sister just so happens to be lacking a carriage, so this item can be given to this little sister. Another delicate girl spoke up. This little sister bids 61,000. I bid 65,000. Xiao Hua didn't show any weakness. This was a big piece of fire essence flame crystal. The price of 60,000 top-grade primordial stones was definitely not high. Moreover, Xiao Hua really liked this war chariot and wanted to use it as a means of transportation. 67,000. An old man at the side immediately said. On the contrary, young Master Duanmu, whom Xiao Hua was worried about, did not bid. However, Xiao Hua understood after thinking for a bit. Young Master Duanmu had the dragon horse and the golden carriage. Naturally, he did not need this scarlet flame war chariot. There were many VIPs who had taken a liking to the scarlet flame war chariot. In just a few moments, the price had been raised to 100,000. However, it was clear that this price was far from the limit. The people on the third floor leisurely increased the price bit by bit. Meanwhile, the people downstairs were already dumbfounded. Previously, the bidding for the dragon bone was done through voice transmission, so they did not hear it. But now, the number of top-grade primordial stones that had not been decided had far exceeded their expectations. For a time, all kinds of envious and jealous gazes fell on the blurry balcony on the third floor. Apart from the East Sea Dragon Palace, who were the other clans? Everyone was whispering and guessing. Naturally, Xiao Hua's identity had also become a mystery. Everyone was guessing who the person who had previously competed with young Master Duanmu was and who had now suddenly bid for the Scarlet Flame War chariot was. In the crowd, there was a stardust figure whose gender could not be determined, and whose height could not be determined. He did not talk to anyone and only coldly raised his head. He narrowed his eyes and looked at the illusory balcony. He seemed to be carefully observing and also seemed to be carefully distinguishing the cultivator who was competing with him for the cultivation method. As the number of primordial stones increased, the number of people bidding also decreased. In the end, only Xiao Hua and two girls were bidding. After Xiao Hua called out a number, the entire auction house was silent. The two girls stopped, as if they had retreated. Yu Linfeng's face was flushed red as he said loudly, "If the two seniors do not increase the price, this Scarlet Flame War chariot will be this senior's." Then, Yu Linfeng said to Xiao Hua, "Senior, you should know that this war chariot is really rare. If senior wants to take this war chariot, you must first complete the transaction of primordial stones." Well said. Xiao Hua faintly smiled and was about to call Xiao Yi in. But at this time, a slightly weak voice spoke. "Fellow immortal Yu, please wait a moment." "Oh?" Yu Linfeng raised his eyebrows. "Senior wants to bid." "Hee hee." Following the girl's chuckle, a light smoke like fog appeared from the windowsill. In a moment, the three-story balcony was covered. The people downstairs were immediately separated from the third floor. The fog blocked everyone's vision and divine sense. In front of Xiao Hua's eyes, the source of the voice came from. As the fog gushed out, a window was slowly pushed open. The face of a girl in her 20s appeared in front of the window. This woman's skin was as white as snow, and her eyes were as bright as stars. Her two faint eyebrows were black without drawing, and her small cherry lips carried a graceful smile. Coupled with her light red palace dress, she could make 100 flowers blush to death. Looking at her fairy-like features, Xiao Hua was momentarily dazed. Her beauty was completely different from Xue Xue and fairy Hong Xia. Other than her innate beauty, it was more of an aura and charm that she had nurtured. "Fellow immortal." The girl opened her mouth. Her voice was still somewhat weak, and her brows were slightly furrowed. This caused Xiao Hua's heart to ache. He couldn't help but want to speak. Unfortunately, before Xiao Hua could speak, Fujiwen had already spoken. "Fairy, if you have something to say, please speak. This junior is all ears." "Hee hee." The girl pursed her lips and smiled, saying, "Little friend, this servant is Princess Bai Hua of Liang Province's Chanu country. My name is Xin Yi." This scarlet flame war chariot is exactly what this servant needs. I wonder if little friend can explain it to your esteemed teacher." Hearing this, Fujiwen's face turned red. He looked at Xiao Hua somewhat embarrassedly and hurriedly shut his mouth. His eyes didn't dare to look at Princess Bai Hua. Xiao Hua looked at Princess Bai Hua's beautiful face. He circulated God's guidance in his body but didn't find anything strange. He knew in his heart that Princess Bai Hua didn't use any soul-sucking secret technique. Everything was based on her own beauty. This kind of beauty even made him slightly dazed. Fujiwen's answer really didn't count for anything. "So it's Princess in front of me. I really am a bit rude." Xiao Hua smiled and cupped his hands. "This servant has already told fellow immortal my name. Fellow immortal shouldn't be so stingy, right?" Princess Bai Hua looked somewhat embarrassed and angry. However, this embarrassment and anger made people feel inferior. Xiao Hua only cursed himself in his heart for being foolish. The girl had already told him her name. He was actually such a bastard that he didn't even tell her his name. "I, Xiao Hua, greets Princess." "Oh, so it's fellow immortal Xiao." This servant really hasn't heard of fellow immortal's name. Princess Bai Hua's face was filled with astonishment. "May I know where fellow immortal is cultivating?" This Xiao was originally a loose cultivator from overseas. Princess not knowing this servant's name is really too normal. "Fellow immortal Xiao, do you have a place to stay?" Princess Bai Hua hurriedly smiled and said, "Although my Chanu country wasn't founded by a Daoist sect, we still welcome capable people like fellow immortal Xiao. If fellow immortal Xiao doesn't mind, you can come to my Chanu country to be the country's teacher." Xiao Hua almost agreed. However, when the words were about to come out of his mouth, he immediately came to his senses and said with a smile, "Princess has misunderstood. This Xiao's cultivation is shallow. How could I dare to be the country's teacher? Princess, if you have something to say, just say it. This scarlet flame war chariot, this Xiao really likes it. He, since fellow immortal Xiao is so straightforward, this servant won't be polite." Princess Bai Hua smiled again. It was really like 100 flowers blooming. Scarlet Flame War Chariot, as the name suggests, is a war chariot. It's not a simple flying imperial equipment. It's used for battle. If fellow immortal Xiao doesn't want to lead troops in battle and doesn't want to be the commander of 10,000 troops, this Scarlet Flame War Chariot is really not as suitable as those flying imperial equipment from before. This Xiao doesn't want to be the commander now, but it doesn't mean that I won't be able to in the future, Xiao Hua said with a smile. Princess Bai Hua slightly nodded her head. "Fellow immortal Xiao, this servant congratulates you in advance for having this ambition. However, fellow immortal Xiao, this is your future ambition. This servant needs this Scarlet Flame War Chariot right now. This servant is now facing a battle and this Scarlet Flame War Chariot is a great help for this servant. Forget it, I won't hide it from fellow immortal Xiao. This servant will tell you the truth. My Chanu country has always had a princess take over the throne. Like this servant, there are 2 other princesses who are qualified to take over the throne. The country wants to choose one of the 3 of us to take over the Chanu country. Naturally, there are methods to choose. One of them is to be the commander and fight. With this Scarlet Flame War Chariot, this servant will be like a tiger that has grown wings, increasing my chances of success by 10%. Speaking to this point, Princess Bai Hua slightly hesitated. She looked to the side and said, Murong family's big sister originally also liked this war chariot and wanted to use it as her ride. However, after hearing this servant's difficulties, she already gave this war chariot to this servant, Sigh. A voice of hidden bitterness sounded like the cry of a group of kingfishers. That so-called Murong family's big sister opened her mouth and said, Your Highness Princess, you can just say what you want. Why do you have to drag this servant into the water? This servant only pulled on Murong family's banner, that's all. Elder sister doesn't need to mind. Princess Bai Hua laughed. Even Xiao Hua had the heart to reprimand her, let alone Murong family's elder sister. Forget it. Xiao Hua thought for a moment and said, although this war chariot is not bad, this Xiao has the heart to take it. However, since Princess has a more important matter, this Xiao can give it to you. Hihi. This servant knew that fellow immortal Xiao would give this servant face. Princess Baihua was overjoyed, and this servant will also remember fellow immortal's favor. In my Chanu country's treasury, there are some Daoist magic treasures as well as some cultivation methods and secret techniques. However, this servant does not have them with me. If possible, when you have free time, fellow immortal can come to my Chanu country. This servant will return this favor to fellow immortal. Good. Xiao Hua clapped his hands and said, as you wish. Good. Princess Baihua faintly smiled and stretched out her hand. Her fingers that were whiter than white jade waved. A white flower flew through the pink mist and landed in front of Xiao Hua. Princess Baihua's voice sounded in Xiao Hua's ear. This is this servant's token. Fellow immortal can use this thing to report in front of this servant's palace door. -11. Chapter 3294. Thank you, Your Highness. Xiao Hua looked at the flower that was like an ice sculpture. He reached out his hand and caught it. He put it in front of his nose and sniffed it. He said, if possible, this Xiao hopes that the palace door is the palace of the Queen of Chanu country. Ha 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 ha, as you wish. When the time comes, this princess will hold a banquet for you in the palace. Princess Baihua laughed a few times. Her long sleeves fluttered, and the pink fog slowly disappeared, revealing the auction field. Seeing that the fog had dissipated, Yu Linfeng cautiously asked, I wonder which senior withdrew? This old man has limited primeval stones. This old man withdraws. Xiao Hua said indifferently. Boom. The entire auction field exploded again. Many people didn't expect that the aggressive Xiao Hua would actually withdraw in the end. Good, if so, this Scarlet Flame War Chariot will be this senior's. Yu Linfeng didn't hesitate and said, Senior, please hand over the primeval stones to Xiao Yi. This one will send the war chariot to senior's window. TSK. So this is Princess Baihua of Chanu country. Xiao Hua indifferently looked at the Scarlet Flame War Chariot flying toward Princess Baihua. Fujiwen at the side exclaimed, this one has long heard that Chanu country has many beauties. The queen and the princess are peerless beauties. Now that I see them, they are really rare in the world. The queen of Chanu country is a woman. Those who compete for the throne are also princesses. What about those princes? What about the queen's husband? Xiao Hua was somewhat baffled. Fujiwen smiled and said, fellow Xiao may not know, this Chanu country is full of women, there are no men. Even the women of Chanu country give birth to girls, I don't see half a boy. Ah! Then how do they get pregnant? Xiao Hua was a bit flabbergasted. Fujiwen shrugged his shoulders and shook his head in a strange manner. Every year, there is a Tilian festival in the Chanu country. It lasts for 7 days. Any young man in the hidden immortal continent can come to the Chanu country. If any man is fancied by a woman of the Chanu country, hey, that fellow Daoist Xiao, you know, damn, this is really strange. Xiao Hua was flabbergasted when he heard this. He unconsciously looked at the plain flower in his hand, and a thoughtful expression appeared in his eyes. At this moment, a cold voice drifted into his ears like gossamer. The flowers are good, and the color is beautiful. However, if they all carry the poison of snakes and scorpions, I'm afraid they will all take one's life. Oh! Xiao Hua wasn't familiar with that voice, but he could tell that it was the voice of the woman from the Murong family who had just spoken. Xiao Hua was slightly stunned. After thinking for a moment, he cupped his hands and transmitted his voice. Fellow immortal, if you have anything to say, you can say it. Unfortunately, Xiao Hua's voice was like a clay ox entering the sea. The woman from the Murong family simply ignored him. What does this person mean? Is it a warning? Xiao Hua thought to himself, but this Xiao doesn't know her at all. Moreover, she seemed to be very familiar with Princess Baihua of the Chanu country. There's no need for her to Speak ill of Princess Baihua behind her back for this Xiao, right? Forget it, I'm afraid. This person has other intentions. Xiao Hua really didn't understand the woman's thoughts. Looking at the source of the voice, he waved his hand and stored the white flower into his space. Pitiful Xiao Hua. Although he was already so old, had dual cultivation with her, and had even been tormented by Fairy Hong Xia's jealousy, in the end, he still didn't understand women. This warning had nothing to do with whether Xiao Hua and the woman from the Murong family knew each other. It had nothing to do with whether the woman from the Murong family had feelings for Xiao Hua. It also had nothing to do with the relationship between the woman from the Murong family and Princess Baihua. It was only related to the natural rejection between the two beautiful women. As Xiao Hua pondered for a moment, the Scarlet Flame War chariot had already disappeared from the auction hall. Clearly, Princess Baihua had already paid the prime val stones. The entire auction hall returned to a deathly silence at the same time the Scarlet Flame War chariot's brilliance disappeared. Everyone's gaze was fixed on the outline of the three continents, on the last ball of brilliance that landed on the Thousand Demons' sacred realm. From the previous arrangement of Zhai Xinglu, this last precious item should be related to the Thousand Demons' sacred realm. It could be a demonic beast, or something obtained from the Thousand Demons' sacred realm. But, what was this thing? To be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with the dragon bones and the Scarlet Flame War chariot. What kind of demonic beast could it be? Of course, in the Thousand Demons' sacred realm, there were countless demonic beasts that could stand shoulder to shoulder with the dragon bones and the Scarlet Flame War chariot. However, there weren't many demonic beasts that could bring the Zhai Xinglu of the hidden immortal continent to bid. Thinking about the demonic beasts that the Bright Moon Palace had previously bid for, many people already had a plan in their hearts. Fellow immortals. Yu Linfeng looked at the entire Bright Moon Palace and said, "At this moment, this is the last item that my Zhai Xinglu will bid for today. Of course, I believe that fellow immortals already know from the outline of the Thousand Demons' sacred realm that this is a demonic beast. That's right, I will officially tell everyone that this is a demonic beast, not a demon. However, this demonic beast is different from the ordinary demonic beasts in the Thousand Demons' sacred realm. As for what's different, we'll talk about it after fellow immortals take a look." Fellow immortal Yu. A cultivator anxiously said, "Could it be that this demonic beast can only be bid for by the distinguished guests upstairs?" Yu Linfeng nodded and said, "That's right. In the end, these two rare items can only be bid for by the distinguished guests upstairs." Sigh. That person wanted to say something, but thinking about the hundreds of thousands of top-grade primordial stones, he immediately shut his mouth. Under everyone's gaze, Yu Linfeng pulled the ball of light in front of him. When the light dissipated, everyone was stunned again. This was because in the air, a crystal that was several feet in size appeared out of thin air. Inside the crystal, there was a white horse that was 3 feet in size. Aside from its snow-white body, there was nothing special about this white horse. Although its white mane that looked like it was fluttering in the wind was extremely vivid inside the crystal, it was just a little lifelike. No one could see what was special about this thing. Fellow immortal you're not mistaken, right? Someone anxiously said downstairs, "Isn't this just an ordinary white horse? What's so strange about it?" That's right, if it was a white dragon horse, there would be dragon patterns in its eyes and a faint golden light around its body. But this white horse's eyes are pure and there's not a trace of golden light around its body. It doesn't have the bloodline of a dragon. That's not right. Look at the white horse's forehead, it seems, there's a bulge. It's somewhat similar to a dragon's horn. Ayo, that's right. Around the auction hall, the people downstairs were making guesses one after another. On the contrary, the VIP guests on the 3rd floor who were qualified to bid were now silent. Xiao Hua pondered a little and understood that these people must have gotten the news. At the very least, they must have come to Zhai Xinglu to find out what kind of demonic beast this last item was from Zhu Qing. That's why they didn't ask about it. This demonic beast is very strange. After everyone guessed for a long time, Yu Linfeng finally said, "It's not as simple as you think. Little friend Utilda, the voice from before was silent for a long time before it spoke again. It's getting late. We still have other matters to attend to. If it's possible, it's better for us to bid earlier. Yes, senior. Yu Linfeng didn't dare to be negligent. He hurriedly bowed and said, "This one will explain to the fellow immortal downstairs and immediately make a bid." This auction night was indeed long. Xiao Hua stood in front of the window with his hands behind his back, looking down at the entire auction hall. Xiao Hua had been in the hidden immortal continent for a long time, but in reality, he had always mingled with the people of the secular world. He didn't understand the entire hidden immortal continent, or it could be said that he didn't have the opportunity to come into contact with the people who cultivated on the hidden immortal continent. That Xing Chen, that Mo Jianli, they were considered experts in Xiao Zhen's eyes, but in the hidden immortal continent, they were only nobodies. Only tonight, in this auction, the door to the cultivators of the hidden immortal continent gradually opened to Xiao Hua. And Xiao Hua also had a rough understanding of the entire hidden immortal continent through Fu Jiwen. "Fellow Daoist Xiao, do you recognize this demonic beast?" Fu Jiwen stood at the side and asked in a low voice. "No matter how I look at it, I don't understand. What's the difference between this and an ordinary white horse?" "Young Master Fu, this one also doesn't recognize it," Xiao Hua answered honestly. "And this one also doesn't have any interest in it." "Oh, right, young Master Fu, this demonic beast, what's the difference between it and a demon? Today's auction has so many demonic beast eggs, does the 1,000 demonic sacred land not care about it?" "I'll let fellow Daoist Xiao know," Fu Jiwen said with a smile. "My hidden immortal continent has a population of 1 trillion, but not everyone can cultivate. The majority of the people on hidden immortal continent are secular people. And the situation of the 1,000 demonic sacred land is the same as my hidden immortal continent. Their demonic beasts are more numerous than the population of my hidden immortal continent. The number of demonic beasts that can cultivate is also very small. And these are demons. Ari, why didn't this one think of it?" Xiao Hua patted his own forehead and said with a bitter smile. "Actually, it's that simple. When cultivators stand out, demons will naturally stand out from demonic beast. Actually, it's not as simple as fellow Daoist thinks. Of course, Fu Jiwen didn't know that Xiao Hua came from Xiaoyu continent. That place only has spirit beasts and demonic cultivators, there are no demons. Therefore, it's not very likely that Xiao Hua would know what a real demon is. However, he still explained, the 1,000 demonic sacred land is different from my hidden immortal continent. Their cultivation relies more on their innate talent. In other words, those who can cultivate to an extremely high realm all rely on their own bloodline and inheritance. Ordinary demonic beasts naturally can't cultivate. They can only rely on their instincts to survive and become the food of other demonic beasts. And some demonic beasts that have the opportunity to cultivate can also become demons. However, their achievements are extremely limited. While speaking, Fu Jiwen pointed at the white horse and said, "For example, this white horse is an extremely ordinary demonic beast. If it's in my hidden immortal continent, it can only be a domestic animal, a meat horse waiting to be slaughtered. At most, it can only be a mount. But this white horse in front of us clearly has some abnormality in its bloodline. It can be distinguished from an ordinary white horse. It's even rarer than ordinary demonic beast. That, fellow Daoist Xiao, do you understand?" 11. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,